In the eons that mankind has walked the stars, a shadow has always followed us. A singular foe and competitor, unique among all the Xenos races that humanity has ever faced. They are the Imperium's eternal adversary. Howling terrors, fungal-spawned monsters, fever-dream nightmare beasts. They are a living sentient blight. Sporting tusks, claws and fangs, with the glint of cunning and terrifying cruelty within shallow, bestial glares. I speak, of course, of the Orks. At times, they have been mankind's greatest persecutors. Indeed, even 10 millennia ago, at the height of the mythic age of the Emperor's Great Crusade, the immense might of one such Orkish empire was only broken by his intervention at Ullanor. We, in our modern Dark Age, have only experienced a mere fraction of the Orkish race's fury. Even then, it is terrible to behold. At Octaries and Armageddon, the Greenskins launch Great WAAAGH. Teeming Orkish billions descend upon the Emperor's armies. They batter down the Imperium's impregnable bastions and put all those hiding within beneath their choppers. Men, women, children. The Orks have no concept of honour, let alone mercy. They slay or enslave all those caught in their path of destruction, and afterward, more often than not, turn on each other. For a greenskin, peace is a negation, a dearth, and a curse. If they cannot find formidable enemies to test the rapid-fire rates of their shooters, they will happily spray their own alien comrades with sadistic glee. Despite their barbarous nature, the Orks are never to be underestimated, nor should the anarchy of their Xenos bioculture be misinterpreted as a collective maladaptation. They are the most prolific race to stain the stars, and perhaps, it may be carefully argued, the most successful. Resourceful, madly innovative, and monstrous all at the same time, the blood-curdling primeval screams of the greenskin hordes are always accompanied by the brutal crush of steel and the grinding of crudely fashioned, impossible machines. They are a galaxy-spanning plague, an endless green tide that floods the frontiers and coreward sectors of the Imperium's many domains. Howling with savage ecstasy and warlike fervour, they drown countless planets in carnage, turning entire hive worlds into smoking ruins, littered with the pilfered wreckage of war machines and half-devoured corpses they indiscriminately leave in their wake. Murderers of billions, hulking brutes, war itself embodied in a hunchbacked, muscular Xenos frame, the Orkoid species is a colossal arm that grasps for the neck of mankind, and an inescapable iron maw that closes around our heads. In this Voxannal, I shall cover every facet of the Orkish threat to the Imperium. This work is a complete appraisal of the Orkoid species and its unique xenoform bioculture, first drawing from the forgotten ages of a more glorious epoch, like the Great Crusade, when Ork empires were thrown down by entire legions of the Emperor's angels, to the benighted reality of our closing days in the 41st millennium, where we find ourselves veering on the brink of annihilation. Nearly everything I know of the Greenskin Plague and its history is here. As an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, my knowledge has been acquired both in the field as well as in the scholae of my hallowed institution. Rest assured, beyond the impenetrable cosmic riddles that no being has yet unravelled concerning the Orks, you shall lack for nothing afterward. The Orks are a perennial species, near unchanging in their customs and gene expression, despite the outward disorder of their foul Xenos breed. Insight into the Orkish threat of the now can only be informed by knowledge of the Orks of the distant past. Hence, we shall start by attempting to plumb their origins, and gain a glimpse into the ineffable green darkness that is the Orkish soul. There are as many accounts and rumours of how the Orks came to be as there are Xenos species in the galaxy. Besides being an ineradicable contagion, they are also a cryptic mystery. Certainty as to how or why they came into being is impossible. When one delves the earliest archives, accounts and sightings that have had the dust swept off them by Imperial archaeologists, another more primordial finding is always unearthed afterwards. The greenskins are abundant throughout all ages and all histories. As ubiquitous throughout time and space as their many fetid camps of war, the Orks are inescapable. But despite this all-encompassing presence and our familiarity with them, they are utterly unfathomable. All attempts to fully comprehend their enigma fail. To find a single fact, truth, or point concerning their emergence or reason to be has proved fruitless. Not even the ancient elder, from what my institution knows, have solved the greenskin puzzle. Among the scholastic adepts of the Ordo Xenos, archaeological historical inquiry is a vexing and rabid field of study. The feverish pitch of its unending debate managed to reach heights that demanded only the most extreme measures to resolve the deadlock. It is a concession I am reluctant to admit, but for the sake of truth and your erudition, I will voice it. My predecessors, long ago, listened to the greenskins' tales. They deconstructed their gargled tongue, decrypted their barbaric sigils, and scrutinized every memory and fanciful story housed within the dull minds of captive Orkish subjects. Predictably, the ultra-primitive nature of the fractious greenskin bioculture has little in the way of record-keeping or scholastic tradition, let alone a concept of linear history. Instead, from what the Inquisition has deduced from their barbarous legends, it appears that the greenskins maintain a parochial and tendentious narrative of their origins, their founding myth. It is passed down through a chain of transmission upheld by the Runtherds, a pastoral caste of orcs that tend to the development and germination of lesser Orkoid types, such as the Gretchin, Snotlings, and others, including the foul Squigs. They laughably claim that an all-intelligent, though diminutive, greenskin species created them. calling these ancestral progenitors Brainboyz. They believe that their inexplicable disappearance was the crescendo of a cosmic tragedy. They are said to have been afflicted by a galactic plague that caused them to die out, or robbed them of their divine intellect. Worn down over the centuries, they subsequently degenerated into an unknown and defunct offshoot species. But this is only one of the stories told by the Runters. Another is more traditionally Orkish in its optimism. They say that the Brainboyz left this galaxy to conquer others, leading crack hordes of greenskin warriors across the stars on a great proto-war. Compared to the former legend, the Brainboyz in this telling are alleged to be even more warlike than their creations. As to why they were created in the first place, the Orks mostly seem to believe that they were created to protect the Brainboyz from predatory rivals and invaders, as well as provide them with a formidable army. According to this view, using their infinite wisdom, the Brainboyz directed the ancestors of modern Orks on their waves of expansion across the stars. Alongside being architects of the Greenskins' ascendancy, they were also inventors of miraculous technologies. If true, one can only ask what the Orks did with the wondrous products of such a civilization. But I digress. Surprisingly, some among the adepts of the Magos biologists favour the notion that such a progenitor species did indeed exist. They agree with the Runtherd account that the Brainboyz sought to preserve their knowledge down through the ages and forced it upon the minds of their slaves. These Martian priests believe that the so-called Brainboyz engineered a kind of noetic intuition within the Orkish genome or psyche. Something like an inborn ability that allows them to instinctively manufacture the weapons and vehicles their Meks spontaneously create. Dull-witted, boorish, and absurdly strange as the Runtherd's legends may be, there are other Imperial scholars who agree that there may be the tiniest grains of truth within them. Whether they can dig it up from the dung and definitively prove it, that is yet to be shown. The most controversial, highly classified and ominous theory that has surfaced amongst the agents of the Ordo Xenos asserts that the Orks are, in fact, creations of the Old Ones, primordial creator beings of unspeakable power. Manifested originally as the Krork, an even stronger and smarter ancestral predecessor of the modern Ork, the Old Ones used them to repel the ancient Necrons in a cosmos-shaking conflict known as the War in Heaven. The scholars behind this idea, cross-referencing the themes of Eldar mythos and secretive study of Necron origins, state that the Orkish legends are actually garbled versions of this original, allegedly true historical narrative. Needless to say, their speculations are about as grounded as the Runtherd's own fungally induced hallucinogenic musings. To try plumb the depths of the Orkoid soul, or their lack of, for a fixed reality, some kernel or data point that satisfies the endless questions they inspire, is a pointless endeavour. The Orks themselves care little for such questions, and the Runtherds are considered an odd and deviant breed even by other greenskins. Rather than scramble for an answer to why they exist, a better question to ask is how they are to be expunged. Despite the Imperium of man's opposition to all Xenos breeds, no matter their degree of civilization or cultural type, one of the few points of agreement between us and them is in our judgment of the Orkoid scourge. The Greenskins are an enemy to all, and in the many annals that have come down to us, the one truth that can be said of the Orks speaks plainly. They are deserving of complete annihilation. To entirely appreciate this truth, we must cover the epic struggle of mankind's earliest known wars of survival fought against the Greenskin plague. In the mysterious antediluvian epoch known as the Age of Strife, mankind was a broken and benighted shadow of itself. Our ancestors, racked by the machinic uprising of abominable intelligences in a time before called the Age of Iron, barely survived that galaxy-spanning disaster. Lost to decline and languishing on the brink of extermination afterward, mankind was completely at the mercy of the unending waves of alien incursions that assaulted its remnants. Isolated in pockets across the stars, preyed upon by innumerable Xenos terrors, humanity suffered under regimes of nightmarish slavery, driven by the whip hand of alien masters or the cudgel of inhumanly vicious tyrants. The Orks predominated as but one among the many cruel enemies of mankind. They had always been our foe, but due to the disunity of the many human colonies, one by one, despite whatever latent relics of techno-arcana they maintained from brighter eons, many holdouts fell to the rush of greenskin empires that expanded throughout the Age of Strife. The Greenskins' activity was near identical to the kind we witness today, though it can be said that they were far more terrifying. Slaughterers, enslavers, they faced little to no resistance in their campaigns of desolation and looting. They destroyed entire holdover human pocket empires at will, scattering pre-unification human armies with Orkoid types the size of hive halves. For the Orks of those days were immense creatures, utterly waxed in blood-glutted power. They ascended through the tiered mysteries of their physiology and emerged as towering behemoths from the tides of blood they spilled. For they overcame all enemies with ease and had no peer in sheer might. Buoyed by unstoppable degrees of momentum, the Orkish wars of the Green Tide rolled over all who opposed their near-galactic reign of terror. Uncounted domains of men that had survived the Age of Iron succumbed under the weight of their numbers and strength, exhausted by the time their gleaming chrome bastions were overrun. Only a god-man, in the end, proved strong enough to defeat them. Throwing off the humiliations of old night and rallying our species to take hold of destiny itself, he would be called, in time, the Emperor of all mankind. After having unified all terror, the Emperor dispatched the newly created victorious legions of Space Marines to recover all that mankind had lost in the ages before his coming. Gradually rediscovering the lost Primarchs, these demi-divine generals and progenitors of the Legiones Astartes would lead the Crusade fleets of the Emperor's armies. Planet by planet, system by system, sector by sector, the shattered remnants of mankind's domains were reforged according to the Emperor's vision. Any alien interloper or debased heretical human regime was cast down. No mercy was shown. All the ignominious centuries of Xenos predation were avenged, and the perpetrators confronted in cataclysmic showdowns spearheaded by the Primarchs and their immortal Astartes sons. Whether facing the migrations of the Hrud or the abyssal terrors of the Rangda, mankind had finally found its will to throw back the alien terror once and for all. It would be at Ullanor that the greatest of the Greenskin empires would encounter their own reckoning, but there were numerous other campaigns fought against the Orks during the Great Crusade. A particularly brutal toppling of Orkish power would be undertaken by the sons of the dread traitor Primarch, Angron. Throughout the Golgothan wastes, a stellar wasteland located near the warp rift of the Maelstrom, the once loyal 12th Legion would vent their terrible fury on the Orks. Clashing the adamantine teeth of their chain axes against the mega choppers of the Greenskins, the World Eaters devoured the aliens' rage in their own. In the course of 11 years, the Space Marines cleansed no fewer than 48 worlds, exterminated 7 Xenos species, and utterly eradicated its greenskin infestation, as well as a Xenos collaborationist abhuman entity called the Brotherhood of Ruin, known for its deployment of nightmarish cyborg soldiers and employment of greenskin reavers. As terrible as these conflicts against Orks were, mostly conducted by a single legion and its attendant auxiliary crusade forces, some greenskin foes demanded an even greater investment of imperial power to quash. Such a struggle can be found in the last century of the 30th millennium, in the closing days of the Great Crusade. As if it were a premonition of Ullanor's campaign, the combined forces of 3 entire Space Marine legions, including the Death Guard, Lunar Wolves, and Imperial Fists, would fight a desperately waged war against the Ork warlord, Garkul Blackfang. Prodigious in his immense power, the greenskin tyrant would come close to strangling the dream of the Imperium at the Battle of Gyros Thravian. Even with the strength of near 300,000 godlike warriors of the Legiones Astartes, as well as 3 of their Primarchs, and the almighty orbital command of the Emperor himself, Imperial forces throughout the battle were veering on the edge of defeat. Disaster was only averted by the direct intervention of the Emperor. Teleporting from his flagship, Bucephalus, he led a strike force of 1,000 of his own Custodes' personal bodyguard into the fray. Intending to save the lives of his Primarch sons and tear the heart out of the Orkish horde, the Emperor confronted Blackfang atop his Gargant, dueling the Archfiend and sending his smitten body tumbling from the Greenskin Titan's edifice. Despite the death of one of Orkdom's greatest warlords ever to have existed, his followers fought on, and over the course of hours, 100,000 of the largest Orkish warriors were cut to shreds by the cold wrath of the Emperor's custodies. During those fierce hours of combat, only 3 custodian guards perished. This victory against the Greenskin Plague was marked by the Emperor's personal commemoration of his bodyguard's sacrifice, etching the names of the fallen custodies onto the radiant gold of his power harness. Even with such a grievous enemy as Black Fang slain, and the dispersion of his Great WAAAGH, mankind had not yet seen the green tides ebb. Ullanor's triumph would finally cause that miracle. During the first year of the newly arrived 31st millennium, the Emperor would lead his last battle, and the Orks would finally learn fear. An undertaking of dramatic proportions, the Crusade would feature over 100,000 Astartes, drawn from the Lunar Wolves, Ultramarines and White Scars, as well as 8 million mortal Imperial Army soldiers. Buried and warded by a formidable armada made up of 600 warships, their holds stowed with over 100 Legio Mortis Titans, the Orkish Empire of Great WAAAGH was fated to die. While the sons of Guilliman and Jagatai Khan were tasked with levelling the outer worlds held by the Greenskins, Horus Lupercal, the very same arch-traitor who, in the years to come, would bathe the nascent Imperium in its own lifeblood, was granted the honour of taking Great WAAAGH's head. In truth, the attacks led by the 13th and 5th Legions were distractions. They incensed the Orks, and saw much of the garrisons that defended WAAAGH's capital world abscond to join the fight on the Greenskin Empire's fringe. This clever ploy opened the way for the favoured tactic of the 16th Legion, a seismic but precise strike of decapitation, intended to send the foe reeling in disarray. Vulnerable and undermanned, the jewel of WAAAGH's empire was primed for the taking. According to Imperial strategy, such a blow to the heart and linchpin of this growing Greenskin Empire would see its disintegration, for the Orks cannot abide an interregnum or the absence of a singularly powerful leader's control. Horus would prove the strategy worked. Speeding with disciplined savagery, Lupercal headed straight for the Warbosses' nexus of power in the Ullanor system, his fortress palace. Crushing any preceding resistance in the void, the Lunar Wolves made planetfall, raining onto the world as a hailstorm of drop pods. As heavy gunships disgorged Imperial armour onto the planet's surface, the Lunar Wolves cleared the path to the palace's walled perimeter and began their assault. Newly aroused, teeming hordes of Orks flooded up to greet them. The Astartes of the 16th Legion engaged them in brutal close-quarters combat, while Lupercal waited for his opportune moment. After waves of greenskins sallied out from inside the fortress palace to try repel the Space Marines from their ramparts, Horus finally struck. Teleporting to the base of the fortress palace's central keep, both he and a detachment of Terminators massacred the remaining sentries. As they forced their way inside, lightning claws flaring, the hulking Nobz and Mega Nobz that had left their warlord's side doubled back. Swarmed by frenzied greenskins, Horus left the majority of his first company behind to hold them off as he pursued their leader within. With 10 of his elite Justaeran sons, the Primarch surmounted the pinnacle of the Great Tower and reached Urg's command chamber. Protected by 40 of the most gargantuan orcs within his empire, Urg's bodyguard put up a grim fight. Crashing against the Terminator plate of the Justaeran and the similarly towering form of the Primarch, the orcs could not prevent their warlord's end. Hacking his way through, the claws of Horus met the Greenskin Overlord's own, and the two duelled as Ullanor burned, its surface engulfed in the fires of a struggle between man and orc that had raged since the dawn of time. Despite the beast's mountainous size and overwhelming brawl, it was Horus who won the day. Crippling the orcish giant, roaring with all his might, Lupercal lifted the monster above his head, exemplifying in that moment the unutterable superiority of the Emperor's divine genecraft, and smote the alien's screaming head down onto the battlements below. Hearing the terror in their warlord's dying wails, all orcish unity was broken, and bloody, beast-like anarchy overtook them. In a single killing strike, the empire of WAAAGH was conquered. Returning to the command throne from the fortress keep's parapets, only a lone Justaeran Terminator survived the battle with Urg's enforcers. First Captain Ezekiel Abaddon remained, drenched in Xenos viscera and his brother's martyred blood. Though in the decades to follow, and the 10,000 years since, the names Horus and Abaddon have only incited terror, curses, and invocations for the Emperor's protection. During Horus's victory of Ullanor at least, one can see their pure ghosts, the angels before the fall, defenders of humanity. These figments of history are long-lost memories of a golden age unravelled by travesty, dying reflections of the Imperium's unborn possibilities. If only Horus and legionaries such as Abaddon might have remained true to the Emperor, perhaps then Ullanor would have truly been the beginning of the end for the Orkish race, and the first stirrings of awakening from but one of mankind's most gruesome of alien nightmares. Alas, the fates are ever cruel to mankind. Such a mercy was never to be so. After Ullanor, our ancient forebears believed the Greenskins to be a declining species. They scoffed at them as to be unworthy of their consideration, and any suggestion of the continued Orkish threat was dismissed. Such hubris seems fanciful now, tragically fanciful. As the traitor legion stained the stars red after Horus's great betrayal, indulging in wanton, misanthropic slaughter fueled by the perverse whispers of the Chaos Gods, the Greenskins licked their wounds. Indeed, many Xenos races exploited Horus Lupercal's struggle for power, receding from man's sight just enough to recuperate and rearm. While truly exhausted alien enemies such as the Eldar would return to bedevil the Imperium in sudden and small-scale opportunistic raids, the Orks would take a millennium and a half to fully gather their strength. Around the year 544 of M32, the vengeance brewing since mankind's victory over the Orks at Ullanor finally arrived. due to its ignominy, the depth of its study, and the classified nature of its many secrets, I shan't divulge the full extent of its almost unprecedented nightmare. At least not in this Vox article of analysis. Perhaps another time. All that needs to be known is that mankind and the Imperium survived by a hair's breadth, suffering a catastrophe that shook the very walls of terror and slew billions. Countless proud and enduring scions of the second founding Adeptus Astartes chapters were obliterated in the so-called War of the Beast, stirring the surviving Space Marine brotherhoods from complacency and delusion. Lulled into a false sense of security after having routed the traitor legions at the Siege of Terra, and during the Scouring, the monstrous re-emergence of mankind's oldest foe in Orkdom proved to almost be our extinction. It can never be overstated. To underestimate the green-skinned species in tactics or strategy is to welcome perdition itself. Collectively, they are a Xenos breed of seemingly infinite potency if left unchecked, and individually are some of the fiercest and most indefatigable fighters in the galaxy. Standing around the height of a man, the average Ork would dwarf us if it had the self-awareness to stand up straight. Boasting dense slabs of musculature within robustly built frames, they easily outmatch a mortal human in brute strength. Elongated, monstrous arms drag behind them, heavy and powerful. Their deadly talons almost scrape the floor. Able to kill with ease even without their prized barbaric weaponry, a disarmed Ork will not stop fighting. It does not have the mental or willful capacity to surrender. Jagged fangs with the size and point of daggers will clench through a man's skull, and its claws shred any exposed flesh within reach. They are all almost invariably gruesomely scarred. A single Ork who has survived the extreme and winnowing environment of his tribe is a powerful warrior. It has endured the murderous challenges and conflicts that continually rage within, internecine scraps that kill and weed out the weak. A grim state of habitation amidst mounds of filth and dung, among other more toxic environs, only hardens their race to any strain of infection. An Ork's skin is often host to numerous deadly parasites, as well as marked by scabs and open wounds. Greenskin endurance is legendary, and they can be found to survive in any environment. Toxic smog fails to choke the life from their lungs. Deadly irradiation and the fell energies of active stars are no match for an Ork's cellular rejuvenation. They can endure the freezing temperatures of drifting ice floes, stomach the corrosive contaminations of chemical swamps, and even exist on airless asteroids. Not to mention, they can populate the charred fragments and husks of a planet's mantle, blasted apart by orbital detonations of exterminatus. Though not entirely impervious to the deleterious effects of these extreme environments, the shanty structures of their savage engineering can shield them from the most fatal dangers. Contributing to this survivability, the green skin gullet can consume practically anything. Orks have no taboo against cannibalism. They engage in the practice even when other foodstuffs are easily available. If stranded on a hostile planet, they will eat anything that moves, including their enemies, Orkish or otherwise. Fighting only strengthens an orc, and the corpse of a foe provides excellent nutrition to escalate its muscular and physiological development. In this way, if an orc warband is repeatedly victorious, buoyed by the spiritual emanations of a WAAAGH's psychic aura, its veteran boys, Nobz, and others can emerge as towering green colossi. These super orcs can even match and exceed the godlike strength of Astartes in combat, and a competent Imperial strategist will always make sure to crush an upstart tribe before they manage to evolve to such a terrifying form. Orc veterans of this advanced size are blissfully uncommon, however. Orcs live for combat. They do not feel horror or any mental anguish when in the thick of it. War completes them and grants them a joy of exhilaration no other race can fully imagine. Bloodshed is psychologically uplifting for a greenskin, a cure for the dreariness otherwise felt by an orc when lugging around its camp. While other species try to find meaning or fulfillment in gentle fields of knowledge, wealth, art, sciences, or religion, orcs don't. They have no aspirations beyond sending a screaming kill saw through the neck of a victim, or collecting enough orkish currency, their literal teeth, to buy a spikier one. Perhaps comparable to the fighters and survivors produced from feral human populations of deathworlds, the average greenskin warrior outmatches even them, at least by dint of natural strength and endurance, if not by will and wit. Only a Catachan jungle fighter comes to mind when thinking of a mortal peer in the art of combat, but even then, a leather-tough hide absorbs conventional stubborn munitions without much pause. Even las volleys have a hard time of halting a massed greenskin charge. Traumatized accounts from guardsmen who survive attritional wave assaults of screaming orc boys and Nobz convey the essential horror of seeing the Greenskin Xenos bioform in its element. I have attached one such Vox record in your data slate's docket. Listen at your convenience. It derives from a mentally shattered soldier of the Steel Legion, a combat veteran of the ongoing war for Armageddon. The resilience of Orkoid physiology is a dark wonder, and a magnet for rampant speculation. Indeed, it continues to boggle the minds of Ordo Xenos scholars and stirs tech priests of the Magi biologists to establish even greater projects of experimentation upon captured greenskin specimens, all to unravel but another facet of their enigma. Practically impervious to pain, an orc can weather even the direst assault of violence inflicted upon its flesh. The secrets behind this trait are hidden within a greenskin's genome. They are, as of yet, to be fully unveiled. Upon the smog and shell-choked fields of Novara Caduceus, I witnessed this biological aberration firsthand. Escorted by Astartes of the Nova Marines, I saw a greenskin's torso bisected from its legs. Defying a blow that would kill a mortal man with ease, the mangled beast continued to crawl towards me. the red gleam of rage within the Ork's eyes remained undimmed. If anything, the cleaving death strike of the Space Marine's power blade incensed it further. Lashing out with impotent fury, spasmodically writhing and clawing furrows in the mud, the visceral hatred of a wounded Ork is truly something to behold. Only a bolt round deposited into its brain stopped it. If the micro-detonation of its shell hadn't pulped the cortical tissue within and erupted through the greenskin's thick skull, who could say whether even a lasgun's beam, shot clean through, would have killed the beast? I was thankful to have requisitioned the detail of the Emperor's angels as guardians, is all I will say. It has been recorded that Orkish medics, a bizarre caste known colloquially as Docs or Painboyz, have patched together and sewn up even the most grievously injured Ork. These medics often cause more damage than they fix up. Arbitrary in the extreme and guided by a manic desire to tear apart and rebuild greenskin flesh, they often make perfectly healthy Orks the victims of their butchery, severing uninjured limbs and grafting on new mechanical devices that often don't make any sense being there. If lucky, an Ork patient will find his hand replaced by a rusty buzzsaw or some other deadly implement. If unlucky, his hand, and possibly all else, will disappear in a shower of sparks and gory chunks, or be carved up and rearranged back together in shocking new bodily configurations. Thanks to the degree to which greenskins can endure pain, however, these ordeals of butchery have little overall effect on a mob's morale. If anything, they may be a source of amusement for a greenskin warband. Most wounds can be healed, and any misunderstanding engendered by a doc's fiendish quackery settled afterwards by a brawl. Such is the power of Orkish endurance. Blown apart, limbs sent flying, head knocked from one's shoulders by a cluster burst of shrapnel. These are but minor travails for the biological survival mechanisms of an Ork. When Ork bosses feud, it is not unknown for them to decapitate each other numerous times in pit bouts, before finally resolving on an alliance if both prove to be as equally ferocious and resilient as the other. The regenerative qualities of their race are near incomparable to any rival form of life in existence. It has been suggested that it is the bizarre hybridization of both fungal and animal natures that renders the Orkoid metabolism to be so powerful. Indeed, it is posited that an Ork's green hue derives from layers of algae that permeated at a cellular level. Under this assumption, any tissue damaged in combat can be broken down and repaired at a remarkable rate through its subdermal restorative operations. Alas, even the formidable artillery barrages of the Imperial Guard are not an entirely sure cure for the greenskin disease. Only cleansing flame can assure a complete purgation, and yet, for each bellowing monster put down, there remains charred to cinders and ash. How many spores escape our flamers? Where else does the fungal rot spread? Such is the insidious and brutal threat the Orks truly pose. They are the mould that coats every wall of the Imperium's domain. Scour one infestation, purge one world. Another greenskin warband congeals in the next. If an Orkish incursion isn't cleansed at the first moment of contact within a system, the spores that cloud their ramshackle fleets will bloom, and endless bloody war ensues. The rapidity of Ork reproduction is so infamous that, besides the established theory of spore-based fungal infection favoured by the majority of Imperial scholars, there are also wilder theses. The Vandermeist theory postulates that the Orkish race inhabits an alternate pocket of reality, a unique dimension where scores of Orks pour from, choking battlefields with fresh reinforcements when the collective Greenskin Gestalt is excited by war. As ever with the Orks, their innate horror is matched by their absurdity. Many who fall into orcological study seem to be, in some way, afflicted by a similar mental derangement. Alongside the standard Ork type, there are other petite greenskin breeds. They fulfill auxiliary and supplementary roles for their kind, most often deployed to manage the unwarlike, pragmatic realities of a greenskin war camp on the move. Dependent on guarantees of protection in order to survive being eaten or casually murdered by Orks, Gretchin perform activities of menial labour that their superiors are loath to do. Short things with long, blade-like ears and similarly saber-like protruding noses, Gretchin are ugly, detestable creatures. Their bigger Ork cousins think so too, and kick them about regularly. Anything that is not fighting in a greenskin camp is done by Gretchin, whether that be roasting captured prisoners on spits to eat, delivering messages, preparing logistics or hauling cargo. All matters of civil organization and camp maintenance become their unasked for duty. Possessing a low cunning, Gretchin often identify the benefits of becoming the personal, obsequious servants of more important Orks, like Mekboyz or Nobz. Others form parallel societies on the fringes of an Ork camp, infesting scrap piles or disappearing down warrens of tunnels. When a war is on the horizon, enthusiastic burner boys will smoke them out from their burrows, or vicious hunting squigs will be deployed to chase them up. Once corralled by a runt-herd, Gretchin will serve most often as cannon fodder for an Orkish warband, their swarms clogging trenches or overrunning the tight compartments of void-faring ships. While extremely weak and pathetic, their cowardice does not inhibit them entirely from performing grisly atrocities. Gretchin are uniquely cruel among all the different kinds of greenskins. They will happily rip apart the helpless and weak elements of an enemy's civilian population, exerting animal sadism in displays that can only turn one's stomach and awaken undying hatred. Medicae facilities, nurseries for the young. Many an Imperial world has felt the torturous hooks and rusty blades of a Gretchin swarm inflicted upon its most vulnerable. While Orks have a natural desire for an equal or greater opponent, the Gretchin would rather torment and kill those who cannot fight back. Beneath the Gretchin in both size and rank are the Snotlings. Relatively harmless for greenskins, these docile, miniature Orkoid variants fulfill the role of agrarian farmers, as strange as that sounds. They tend to the great fungal outgrowths found in the cesspits that follow the encampments of a greenskin host, as well as carpeting the ground wherever a green foot treads. In this way, they perform a vital duty for the good of their tribes, providing other greenskins with a grown and dependable staple source of food. Medicine is another valued commodity these strange creatures inexplicably produce. Besides labouring under canopies of shrooms, or rearing the breeds of squiggly beasts they have a natural affinity for, they also provide entertainment for their larger cousins, kept as pets or vaunted for their ability to produce fungal beer. Snotlings are also consumed by Orkish superiors as a choice delicacy. Mindless beasts, Squigs are the second staple food source besides basic fungi for the greenskin species. Beneficially mobile and transportable, they can feed an orc while on campaign. Waddling on short legs, the most common variants follow their sentient cousins throughout the galaxy, herded and reared by the runt herds and snotlings. They are Orkoids as well, but are the least developed subgroup in the species. There are a wide range of different breeds of squig. All fulfill niche roles in the broader Orkoid ecosystem. Some are skinned, their hides proving useful for coats of primitive Orkish brigandines. Others are deployed as mounts, ridden in war or for the rough sports of Orkish leisure. Most squigs are ferocious and deadly, with the face-eater squig being particularly nasty. Others are less so, like the growler squig, ankle-biting miniatures kept by Nobz and Oddboyz as a toy pet of status. Even utilitarian forms of squig are bred, such as the oily squig. This long-snouted variation has a naturally occurring profusion of oil that seeps from its skin and keeps inside its body. Big squigs are always valued by prospective buyers, and herders get them that way by feeding them from the immense heaps of greenskin refuse that are dumped in a camp's cesspits. Usually, these pits also serve as their pens, and merciless runt herds will often throw captured human slaves and their smaller cousins to the ravenous squigs inside. As typically found while observing the Orkoid species, a superficial degree of anarchy and dysfunction conceals a deeper reality beneath. Rather than a complete societal incoherence, there is a method to whatever madness that governs the collective psyche of the greenskin bioculture. The genetic division of Ork, Gretchin, Snotling, and Squig could even be seen as a special caste system, one that is ultimately collaborative and symbiotic. Every link in the greenskin chain bizarrely strengthens the other, at least in a collective, evolutionary sense. Greenskins individually are as much a horror to each other as they are to their racial enemies. When gathered into a tribe, a coalition of various types of clan-kin orcs, as well as their servile underling subspecies, such as the Gretchin, greenskins produce a remarkably hierarchical Xenos society, governed entirely by violence. The larger orcs intimidate their smaller kin into obeying their commands, and in turn, the smaller orcs predate on those they diminutively call grots. Ready to devour, beat, torture, and kill those they believe to be inferior, the Orkoid society, to use the term loosely, has thorough but unconscious mechanisms of racial hygiene. Individual greenskins that either aren't strong or cunning enough die gruesomely. The rigidly deterministic stratification that orders orcs according to size, physical power, and ability to kill also provides a certain stability for their social order. Its barbarous simplicity allows the same Orkish bioculture to reproduce throughout eons, remaining entirely unchanged. Pit fights, squig eating contests, and daring track races allow contests of rivalry between competing orcs to be quickly resolved. There are no deadlocks of indecision in a paralysing bureaucratic process to decide who is in the right, or winding, indecisive arguments to prove who is wrong. Indeed, pit fights are the crux of what could pass as an orkish juridical process. Might, and might alone, is the only measure of righteousness and truth in an orc's eyes. If a greenskin wishes to lead others, he must also be able to kill and intimidate them as well. That is why a member of the smaller Orkoid subspecies could never command a warband. Only big greenskins rise to the top. Understanding these principles of orkish culture, decadence and soft living are an impossible development for the Orkoid species. There will never be an insurgent, aspirational class of greenskin to upset the status quo. Economic developments that shift and blur the barriers of caste differentiation, upscaling social movements. These are completely unthinkable when considering orkish life. Greenskin hierarchy is effective, intuitive, and entirely hardwired within their genes. Everything about them is honed for a squalid, brutal existence, wholly unthinking and lacking any and all desires apart from that of unleashing total violence across the stars. Led by a warboss, the biggest and meanest orc on a continent or a world, or in a system, a tribe is a rough designation that includes all the greenskins in a locality, unified by a common leadership. A warboss is a truly monstrous Xenos abomination, sometimes standing over 10 feet tall or taller, with a musculature that far exceeds an average greenskin's. A warboss can be the size and width of an armoured vehicle. Often encased in a suit of orkish mega armour, and armed with the most deadly weaponry available, it practically is a walking tank. A warboss commands other orcs through threat of imminent death if they disobey its orders. While certainly able enough to kill the defiant or heedless lackeys that surround it, a warboss requires an intercessory body of subordinates and enforcers to make sure the entire tribe knows what it wants done. The size of a tribe can greatly influence its structure. They can number from a few hundred orcs to millions. Generally, a warboss will be surrounded by a retinue of Nobz, the elite of orkish warriorhood. They will help enforce its will upon their own lessers, and if they sense weakness and hesitation from their hulking commander, they will turn on it, challenging the boss for rulership of the tribe. While most warbosses ascend to power through ruthless violence after themselves being Nobz, a minority do so through cleverness and guile. Most often these arch-trickster orc chieftains are drawn from the ranks of Oddboyz, a broad parallel caste designation that includes numerous types. The most important are Mekboyz, orkish engineers, Painboyz, orkish medics, Weirdboyz, orcs who channel the psychic gestalt of their race, and even runturds. Greenskins will sometimes refer to such an odd warboss as a Mekboss, Painboss, Weirdboss, and so on. Beneath a warboss and his Nobz in the greenskin tribal hierarchy are the vast majority of Ork boys. Desperate to express their gene-coded proclivity for savage slaughter, Boyz do not require any goading to charge into battle. Gathering in great hordes, wielding any weapon at hand, they are the gleeful foot soldiers of the Orkoid war machine. Boyz are the life of any Ork mob. If they survive long enough, one day they may grow large and strong enough to become prestigious Nobz, and mount trophy poles atop their crooked spines. Indeed, every Ork warboss begins its life as but one howling boy that miraculously weathers the incessant hails of fire and press of blades that cut short the lives of innumerable others. As a boy reaches maturity, having first participated in smaller scale skirmishes and then all-out regional wars, he will pursue a means of murder that evokes his fascination. Orks are singularly excitable and dedicated once they find the particular niche of warfare that suits them, devoting their entire lives to better enhance their proficiency for it. If an Ork boy finds that it delights in the thrill of tank hunting, the beast will find other tank-buster tribe mates who share its enthusiasm. Orkish pyromaniacs that are attracted to huffing promethium fumes and igniting entire hab blocks will likewise cluster together in mobs, becoming known as burner boys. In this way, specialist teams emerge within a tribe. The most sizable contingent of these unique Orkish warrior brotherhoods are known as speed freaks. While most Orks are satisfied by the thunder of guns, the rattling clink of shooter casings, and the wailing screams of those they cut apart with chopper and claw, there are a significant number who are drawn to a greater mystery. Devotees of the cult of supercharged engines, speed freaks lose themselves in the saddle, accelerating their scrap-forged death traps with suicidal abandon. Speed has a special allure from an Ork's perspective, most likely due to the impressive spikes of adrenaline it can spark off. Riding warbikes or driving jittery buggies, they love to feel the wind in their faces, exulting in the belches of smoke and throaty roars of their machines' exhausts. These vehicles, haphazard and unsophisticated as they are, and nothing compared to the armoured might of the Imperium's own war machines, have the ability to wreak havoc once they're loose along a warfront. The speed freaks who pilot them serve their tribe as outriders, forward scouts, and snaking motorized assault columns. Packed with absurd amounts of firepower, or Daka as the fiends call it, they can unleash terrifying and sudden explosive and ballistic salvos upon an enemy's line once they get close enough. If a tribe has a supply of flying bomber and fighter craft on hand, many speed freaks will choose this even faster aeronautical option and race against the wheels and tracks of their land-born comrades to inflict first blood as a battle commences. In order for the different warfighting elements of an Orkoid tribe to function, it would be impossible if not for a unique ancillary division of Orks. While Gretchin are indeed suitable for mundane, necessary tasks unfitting for a warrior Ork, they are puny and ill-tempered. They cannot be trusted for more serious duties. Their rat-like minds are comparatively uninventive and insufficiently engrossed enough to maintain Orkish weapons. Nor do they have the mental grit and joyous attitude that causes Orks to wonder at the terror and butchery of a battlefield. Moreover, Gretchin cannot command any basic level of respect from their larger cousins. Therefore, an accursed evolutionary providence has spurred in the Orkish main species alternate, divergent phenotypes to help support their war efforts. Perhaps, if they are indeed the creations of the Old Ones, these distinct groups were distilled from the beginning. Known as Oddboyz, as mentioned previously, they are considered to be freakish by their peers. From their earliest years, these unstable green-skinned specimens distinguish themselves from the rest of their mob. While an average orc will be drawn to a purely warlike vocation, making all haste to sell its life in the pit or front line, an oddboy is seen elsewhere. One type of oddboy can be found tinkering with vandalized, looted machinery, an interest that will eventually see him develop into one of the madly innovative mech boys. These orc technologists devise radical and obscene weapons, vehicles, lighting, utilities, complex structures, and practically anything the orcs depend on in order to not subsist as completely backward troglodytes. Meks are most valued by orcs predictably for their warlike productions. Mech boys churn out the munitions, war machines, and armaments necessary for an active warband. These include, to name but a few, sluggers, shooters, burners, death guns, cannons, zap guns, stick bombs, power claws, killer cans, death dreads, Daka jets, and many, many others. Murderously volatile, all of these inventions are as likely to help immolate their wielders or occupants as they are the orcs' foe. The majority of orcs are unfazed by the occasional critical failure, blast, or withering emission of radiation from a mech's device, and will go back to demand an even bigger and better one if the weapon proves entertaining enough. The orcs are a perverse and sickening Xenos breed. When a meganob needs to repair his mega armor, or a boy needs to upgrade his hatchet to a whirring chain-bladed chopper, they will visit the scrap heap of a mech. Meks, especially ones that manage to create novel and interesting derivatives of existing Ork xenotech patterns, can establish themselves within the tribe as indispensable artisans. They can also accrue vast sums of Ork teeth, the universal currency of the green-skinned species, and a mech's line of work never goes out of demand. Another kind of young oddboy will become a nuisance on the battlefield, prodding wounds and mangling a dying comrade's flesh during their final moments. These fledgling hacksaws grow to join the sinister medics called Painboyz. Orklings who show unsettling signs of introversion become runtherds. They're easily identified after isolating themselves from the rest of their young peers, finding the even duller minds of Squigs and harmless natures of Snotlings to make for better company. Besides fulfilling their role as strange mythicists, slave drivers, and squiggly herders, they wrangle such beasts and their inferior Gretchin or Snotling cousins into battle. The most dramatically deviant breed of oddboy possesses uncanny psychic powers. Hearing the blood-chilling twin drums of the Orkish deities within its animal spirit, such an unfortunate orc is destined to be a weird boy. Demented by their unnatural attunement to the greenskin race's collective psyche, they become a conduit for its abominable power. Raining bolts of incandescent green death on the enemies of orc kind, they are as deadly to their fellows as they are to anything else within their vicinity. A weird boy's life is often a short one, its head bursting like overripe fruit after being pressurized by the bestial and occult energy that pulses from a bloodthirsty green-skinned frog. Even a raucous squig-eating contest wagered between two boys has the potential to fatally disturb a weird boy's mind. As a consequence, weird boys are notorious among greenskins as being the only orcs in existence to actively avoid a fight. Threatened by daring and burly handlers, a weird boy might even be chained and dragged into battle, before finally being directed to vomit up the roiling warp magics it barely contains within its cranium. It takes a truly insane greenskin to find such an experience enjoyable, but there are a minority of weird boys that do. Called warpheads by their comrades, they spew baleful gouts of ectoplasmic energy and belch etheric curses at will. Seeking out the largest WAAAGHs they can find, warpheads gamble with both their and other greenskins' lives. When empowered by such concentrations of the Orkoid psychic gestalt, a battlefield trembles and buckles beneath the madness a warphead can unleash. More often than not, such a tidal wave of warp energy consumes the minds of greenskins for miles around, and the ripples of bursting brains emanates ever outward until its locus point finally erupts from the warp head itself. All of these different breeds of Oddboy are born with a natural expertise and intuition for their particular craft. They practice it without having ever been taught, and strengthen their tribe with its utility. An Oddboy's special activity is most likely the expression of its unique strain of the greenskin genome, not a skill adopted through free will. The epistemological question posed by the Oddboy is one of the greatest layers to the greenskin mystery. As with all the others, there is no satisfying closure to be found in its study. No one answer completely explains how they know what they know. All we have are faint suggestions, flimsy suppositions, and theories. Damnable theories. Regardless, Oddboys are the glue that binds a tribe, and without them, the greenskins would remain as bone-gnawing primitives, lacking simple technologies, societal cohesion, warp ability, and the basic functionality required of any galaxy-striding species. A far less useful orc type, Madboys are mentally defective greenskins that exist on the periphery of a tribe, populating small and dismal shantytowns, usually forming retinues for similarly unstable weird boys. They are a strangely tolerated anomaly among orcs. Numerous theories abound why their more functional brethren keep them around. Whether it is because their whooping, discordant mobs in battle can serve as cannon fodder and attract and absorb the attention of the enemy's guns, or simply because their antics prove to be entertaining for the greenskins' cruel and bizarre sense of humour, Madboys are another dubious mystery. Surprisingly, they can even be a potent asset in combat. The alien mind of an orc has unexplored vistas and avenues, shallow as they may be. A broken greenskin brain can apparently open up new possibilities in the form of revolutionary and erratic tactical calculations. In battle, a mob of Madboys are indeterminable foes, and can throw an entire trench line into chaos with their unpredictable movements. Moreover, their feral madness can prove to be even more heinous than the straightforward fury of a mentally stable orc. Those guardsmen who underestimate them as just another swarm of boys can find their platoons quickly outmaneuvered and overrun. Dramatically successful or utterly useless, a Mad Boy is a microcosmic embodiment of the greenskin tendency for extremes. On campaign, a tribe will be divided into formations called warbands. These tactical divisions are made in order for a tribe to operate across a wide front, drawn from warriors brought together by common associations and preferences for particular ways of fighting. They vary dramatically in both numbers and tactical makeup. Led by a boss of their own, his will generally establishes the theme of his army. Warbands mostly consist of a hard core of infantry, reinforced by attachments of warbikers, weapons specialist orc mobs, speed freak warbikers, armoured walkers, oddboyz, and rickety flyers. However, many are entirely composed of orcs of the same type, drawn together by their particularist passion for carnage and mirror-like similitude. Therefore, it is not uncommon for warbands to be entirely composed of mechanized orcs, columns of greenskin armor, long-barreled artillery batteries, or waves of foot-slogging boys and Nobz. The variation inherent in the makeup of a tribe's warbands can be nonsensical and even undermine its effectiveness. This matters little to an orc commander, or the rank-and-file greenskins within a tribe or warband. Orcs fight joyously, regardless of whether they win or die. The broader greenskin strategy in their latent, collective subconscious relies more on unending attritional wave assaults than optimal configurations of an army's formations. For every shattered warband, there will always be a replacement, sprung up from the invasive spores that followed their predecessors. To further confuse a tribe's tactical coherency and sense of identity, orcs tend to cluster along the lines of clan kinship. These organizations seem to have a phenotypic basis for being, as clans are both tactical bodies that exemplify particular modes of war and gatherings of congenital strains of orc. While tribes and warbands constantly find themselves deconstructed either by decimation in war or torn apart by internecine tribal conflicts, clans are the immutable and eternal element of social identity in the Orkish bioculture. An orc boy will inherently know which clan it belongs to. Its drawl whispers in its blood. Each clan is a unique collective dimension of the Orkish character, with genetic traits and temperaments associated with it. They are not formations in themselves, unanimously governed by a single ultimate figurehead, but loose associations that can be found in every corner of the greenskins' dominion across the stars. The different clans often combine within a tribe under a unifying war boss, with different demographic proportions of each clan depending on their power and fecundity in a region of space. With their origins shrouded by time, 6 clans predominate among the greenskins. They are the Goths, Evil Sunz, Bad Moons, Snakebites, Blood Axes, and Deathskulls. Goths are the greatest melee fighters in all Orkdom. Supremely self-assured, arrogant beyond even Orkish standards, their sense of superiority sees many a Goth rise to become their tribe's warboss. Seeing all other clans as inferior and deserving of a brutal regime and command, Goth rulers employ every beating and decimation necessary to hold power in a tribe. Indeed, the Arch-Fiend of Armageddon and terror to all who live, Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka, is a proud Goth. The Goths take to heart the central greenskin ethos of might makes right. When not fighting in the vanguard of a warband, they clog every fighting pit in an Orkish war camp, looking for any chance to hone their choppers, fangs and claws. Goth boys will plunge a tribe into vicious anarchy, if not kept in line. Craving dominance and close quarters combat, Goths exult in the breaking of skulls and the eruption of brain matter as a point-blank shoot-around embeds in a victim's head. For this reason, Goths in a warband will swarm together in a frenzy, providing a sea of massive green bodies that charge headlong into an enemy's gun line, no matter the cost. While innocently ignorant Imperial commanders might believe this behaviour is underpinned by the Goth clan's appreciation for attritional strategy and meat wave tactics, the reality is likely far more banal. A single Goth, noticing the agitated movements of others, will follow them instinctively, sensing bloodshed on the horizon. Droves of Goths will flock to the banner of any rising warlord if it demonstrates its ability to unleash paroxysms of slaughter, and together they will plunge entire planetary systems into war. Goth mobs always have an abundance of boys to throw at the enemy. They are likely to be the most numerous among the Ork clans. Headed by Nobz, almost all muscularly prodigious in size, Goths are perhaps the ideal embodiment of the truest form of greenskin warrior. Clad head to toe in black, their rusty harnesses sometimes decorated with checkered patterns, Goths consider the pastel hues of the other clans' liveries to be effete embarrassments. They also despise subversive, cunning means of warfare, such as the camouflaged subterfuge of Ork commandos. Despite the trouble they can incite in between battles when a tribe is on the move or recovering, Goth mobs are universally appreciated by other greenskins for their undisputed mastery of up-close violence. This is especially true of the Orks who bet teeth on them during pit fights. A Goth is almost always a sure victor in any blood sport, and a clever greenskin can come away with a fortune if he plays the odds well. Daring even by Orkish standards, members of the evil Sunz clan love nothing more than to race into battle at breakneck speed. Whether hitching a ride atop crimson battle wagons or gunning the accelerators of vicious warbikes, evil Sunz descend as a mechanized horde upon the flanks of their enemy, shrouded in clouds of engine smoke and colliding with showers of gore and pulped flying bodies. These Orks are fiercely proud of their devilish machines. Each is a unique and bizarre amalgam of parts, often contrived from multiple different types of vehicle in order to make the rusty mongrel faster. Jet engines on a truck, wings welded onto bikes, additional wheels bolted on or tank tracks fitted where they shouldn't be. The combinations contrived by an evil Sunz novelty-seeking mind are endless. Even propellers are a common choice to further propel a land vehicle driven by an evil sun. Such a need for speed has compelled them to dabble in even stranger, more exotic innovations, such as treadmills powered by running Squigs. An orc of this clan will suffer any cost in order to acquire its own vehicle, either by purchasing one with hoarded sums of teeth, or stealing it from a rival. An evil son will even risk death in order to not be left behind in the dust of his comrades. Nothing enlivens this breed of orc more than the acrid stench of fired promethium fuel and the mechanical growl of a big engine. Once they have attained their prize, it will become their life's joy and constant object of fixation and tinkering. As long as an evil son survives, Meks will remake his vehicle innumerable times, developing it into a costly project that demands a conveyor line of newer optimizations and inventions in order for it to reach new heights of orkiness. Through these obsessions, the evil sons have produced technological feats of full throttle acceleration. What is not subject to the whimsies of their green skin innovation, however, is the painted livery that the evil sons favour. Bright red unifies what would otherwise be a complete technological anarchy, and provides the core of the clan's visual identity. Red, according to Orkish superstition, is the colour of haste itself, and before coating piston-driven steeds, it once ritually painted the hides of their ancestors' mounts. This primitive tradition has carried over into a more advanced age, but now the red that is used is instead drawn from industrial paint, not the blood of enemies. To this day, some evil sons favour both mediums. Temperamentally, the evil sons are as rapidly changeable and prone to fits of impulse in war as they are when racing or tinkering with their vehicles. Tactics are of little use to them unless they result in a good scrap. If encountering little resistance in battle, or assured that the victory is halfway won, they will turn their war machines about en masse and look abroad elsewhere for hardy foes. This mercurial nature has even led evil sons to abandon campaigns on a world's surface, instead returning back to their void-faring vessels to find fresh targets in neighbouring systems. Unlike other greenskins, they care little for mopping up the remnants of a defeated foe. The only exception to this observation would be for cowards who turn tail and run in battle. For an evil son, racing is adored as much as killing, and if combined together, there is no more beloved a clan sport. It gives them the opportunity to really open up their throttles and gun their thrusters, delighting in the dual flare of shooter sparks and gouts of engine flame. When confronted with a near-peer enemy, the evil sons readily commit to dividing their forces among the prongs of high-speed mechanized assaults. As attackers, they either pincer their foes' unguarded flanks, or plough through their front ranks and defences with columns of war bikes, buggies, and trucks. If the evil sons aren't rebuffed on contact, they will assuredly wheel round and return as a slingshot, carried behind enemy lines by a frenzied momentum that will repeatedly crash again and again against the forces before them that remain unbroken. Hated especially by Imperial commanders, the evil sons' autonomous, ultra-mobile tactics proved to be troublesome for the largely static and planned conventions of the Astra Militarum. While other Xenos breeds such as the Tau are similarly vexatious in their fluidity, the greenskins of the evil Sunz express none of the same flighty cowardice, and their rapid formations are made all the more unpredictable by natural Orkish caprice. Only when zeroed in on and countered by the zealous resistance of anti-vehicle specialists or similarly mobile forces can the snaking, cavalry-like onslaught of an evil Sunz blitzkrieg be halted. Even in defeat, their savage glee remains undimmed. To perish, thrown through the windscreen of a truck, or consumed in the colossal explosion of one's own over-tuned engine, is deemed a noble end by their clan. Reflected in the shards of rear-view mirrors, scattered from burnt-out rusty frames, the last expression of an evil Sun Ork will invariably be one of undying exhilaration. If there could be any mercantile caste amongst this race of warrior Xenos, the Bad Moon clan are it. Endowed with an ability to grow and regrow teeth at a rate that is the envy of other clan-type orcs, they are able to summon and hoard what passes as wealth among their stinking kind. While other orcs dedicate themselves to crude artistries of violence and primitive machinery, the Bad Moons love opulence, as well as the glittering adornments of gold and cachets of high-quality weaponry it can afford them. Many clever Bad Moon chieftains spend their teeth to rest in the shade of great Ork Warbosses, buying them as formidable protectors and to hedge their fortunes. In this way, Bad Moon Orks have come to be especially valued by savvier greenskin leaders. Some will keep them around just to knock out and collect the teeth of their boys, periodically providing stimulations of liquidity for their tribe's economy. A Bad Moon hierarch, in particular, is an excellent asset for any aspiring warboss. The most intelligent can negotiate and foster cooperation between greenskin forces, usually initiated by fat bribes. A particularly wealthy Bad Moon boss can even finance greenskin logistics of interplanetary and interstellar transportation, an utterly crucial element for any expansionist empire. This is mostly achieved through the purchase of an Ork Freebooterz allegiance and usage of his fleet, allowing a fledgling warboss to spread his influence and clobber rival Orc tribes into submission elsewhere in a system or subsector. Others commission feverish projects of greenskin innovation, plying Meks with generous patronages. A Bad Moon's treasure trove can fuel rapid developments of industry on a world occupied by Orks. Towering scaffolds arise as if from nowhere, growing into Xenos Titan gargants and spawning countless other smaller projects that fashion stompers, Gorkanals, and Morkanals from scrap and debris. Another benefit of attracting and maintaining Bad Moon clan orcs within a tribe is the quality of their war gear. Bad Moon mobs are infamously well armed in comparison to other clan formations. Jealously regarded by their cousins, they can acquire the finest munitions and armour available, whether it be in the form of gold-plated buggies, war trucks, or particularly large and well-made, customised variants of greenskin armaments. They are considered flash, to use one of the greenskins' own barbaric distortions of our tongue. Though gold is seen as worthless by most orcs due to its softness and limited use in war, the Bad Moons practically worship it. The bright yellow of their livery is painted in imitation of its hue and shininess, and even the lowliest boy, will have at least one fang coated in heavily diluted gold. Indeed, anything remotely shiny that attracts a Bad Moon's eye will be happily affixed to his harness, or decoratively pierced through his hide. Beyond trophies of rare metals and jewellery, Bad Moon vehicles and warriors will sport other impressive artifacts to induce awe in other orcs. Gaudy idols of orcish deities cobbled together from valuable stones are a pious choice for the bonnet of a battle wagon, while Bad Moon Nobz festoon themselves with totems carrying expensively carved orcish masks. If these displays weren't enough, their elite warriors often bring with them entire coteries of Gretchin, their small bodies laden with cargo, straining under the weight of immense chests of bedazzling ammunition and teeth. Such imperious demonstrations of the Bad Moon clan's wealth and power can both attract opportunistic attacks and dispel them before they begin. As ever with orcs, their obsessions tend to result in either meteoric feats of success or dismal failure. A wise Bad Moon boss will always have made sure to have shared his luxury enough to see his rivals both within his clan and outside it satiated and dissuaded from any challenge they might make over his booty. Overall, Bad Moons almost always value cunning over strength. This fact doesn't deny the reality that a Bad Moon warrior is still an orc and can readily kill at a moment's notice. In their case, they favour a gaudy murder weapon like a bejeweled cleaver or diamond-toothed mega chopper. The true threat this clan poses to the Imperium, however, is in its logistical capacity. The Bad Moons are the grease that helps an insurgent greenskin war machine grind forward. While corrupt men might shed blood to acquire treasure, for the Orkish race it is mostly the other way around. The wealth of the Bad Moon clan has bought oceans of it. Savages among an entire Xenos race of savages, the Snakebites are retrograde throwbacks to an even more primitive stage of Orc societal evolution. They reject most developments of Orkish weaponry and technology, instead favouring tried and true implements such as rock clubs or cleavers hewn from the femur bones of their giant prey. Snakebite orcs see any departure from primordial greenskin tradition as a symptom of un-orkish degeneracy, and cleave to the old ways more than any other clan. Daubed in the squalid filth of their camp, and heaped with all manner of barbarous charms and totemic keepsakes, such as the fangs, hides, and talons of the beasts they have hunted, Snakebites are repugnant to both smell and see. As a result of the hardship they endure due to their refusal to acclimatise to newer Orkish technologies, Snakebites are remarkably tough. They live amongst the most vicious of squiggly predators, as well as other monsters, capturing and breeding them, forever chasing more horrific kinds to pen. Snakebites, therefore, are masters in the art of bestial eugenics. Orcs of other clans will regularly visit their huts in order to purchase deadlier breeds of Squigs, or watch snakebite runt herds feed their livestock squealing grots. Snakebite Gretchin are also profoundly more useful than any other kind bred by the runt herds of other clans. They are more obedient or even fierce. In combat, the Snakebites often use their grots as operators of more technical weaponry they despise, such as artillery batteries, or relatively complex weapons the other clans wouldn't dream of allowing Gretchin near. The greatest beasts bred by the Snakebites are Squigs, towering Orkoid behemoths. These creatures are feared for their ability to flip even the tanks of the Astra Militarum and trample any dense formation of guardsmen caught in their rampage. Generated from uniquely foul-tempered Squigs, Squigs are the result of countless generations of phenotypic refinement and selective gene isolation. Predictably, aggression and size are the only real traits a snakebite breeder cares for. Directed by a snakebite mahout in battle, its loyal Squiggoth will be a nightmare to contain. Incensed by its eons worth of genetic material honed for death and little else, a snakebite Squiggoth will lead the charge of an ungodly menagerie of other nightmare creatures the clan unleash on a battlefield. When WAAAGH thundered out from the Ghoul Stars and into the Eastern Fringe, a tribe almost entirely composed of snakebites came with them. Named the Wormkiller tribe, these snakebites were grisly veterans of wars fought against Tyranids. According to the tribe's runtards, the Wormkillers had first encountered Tyranids in the form of what would prove to be a mycetic spore they had discovered on a remote, unknown world. After having satisfied their penchant for hunting the planet's natural fauna, they dragged the Tyranids' unhatched bioconveyor up to the Ork fleet that hung in the void above. The snakebites subsequently unleashed the Tyranids preserved within their cruiser. Spilling into every crevice of its labyrinthine hull, the beasts made good sport for the snakebites, who delighted in the Tyranids' accelerated bio-development. They also marvelled at the rapid rate at which such creatures multiplied. Soon, the Ork cruiser became terminally infested. While the snakebites thrived in the otherworldly bio-jungle that swallowed the rusty corridors and chambers of their cruiser, the other Ork tribes that shared it with them did not. Nearly every other clan-type Ork had died by the time the cruiser had drifted from the barren void into a populated system. The snakebites, however, managed to learn the weaknesses of their new prey and killed the vast majority of Tyranid Hormigons, gene stealers, and other creatures lurking in the ship's holds. Daubed with the green acidic blood of the Tyranids, and mounted with plates of chitin and other Xenos trophies, the snakebites triumphantly named their tribe the Wormkillers. Joining up with other Orks in order to replenish the losses incurred in their recent Void War, they then set about plaguing the nearest Imperial world with their predations. Armed with the claws, fangs, and bone scythes they had ripped from the aliens' corpses, the Wormkillers also exposed their new human victims to the living versions of the Tyranids they had slain. Capturing beasts that had survived aboard their cruiser, they loosed them planetside. In the ensuing war that shook its surface, the snakebites deliberately prolonged their slaughter of the native humans. Calculated with dull, barbarous minds, they foresaw that the Tyranids would need time to achieve a sufficient level of infestation. Eventually, when the last Imperial fortress was silenced, the Tyranids emerged in screaming, endless swarms. For snakebites such as the Wormkillers, they regard the Tyranid monsters of the High Fleets as laudable pets, and excellent prey to test their mettle against. For this reason, the Wormkillers, managing to survive the first swarms they had unleashed on such a world, would spread similar infestations across countless Imperial worlds ever afterward. The savage cruelty of this clan type of Ork knows no bounds. The Snakebites are a menace of the worst kind, and their cunning persists beneath the affect of primitivism they adopt around other Orks. The WAAAGH clan are treated with a mixture of disgust and derision by other Ork clans. They have gained a reputation for un-Orkish behaviour, which deeply upsets and confuses the majority of their kindred. The specific un-Orkish behaviour in question is basic tactical acumen, as WAAAGHs are oddly thoughtful for an Ork breed. They are puzzled by the near-suicidal tactics that the majority of greenskins adopt. They see little attraction in the en masse charges of goth boys, which are mostly scythed down before they manage to break onto a trench line. Nor are the unsubtle, garish hues of bright golden yellow that the bad moods employ desired at all by the WAAAGHs. The glimmer of jewels and the towering heights of prodigious trophy poles are spotted from miles away by a competently observant enemy. No, for WAAAGHs, these are deeply flawed, nonsensical behaviours that get in the way of what all Orks truly desire: a successful kill. A desire for victory in battle is also a strange deviation in the WAAAGHs' thinking. Most other Orks don't care for or consider the possibility of losing a fight. A greenskin's unbreakable will and unthinking determination carries it through, and if it dies, the beast can't really comprehend what its own death really means, anyway. Fatally wounded Orks are only frustrated if they die without sufficiently tearing off a limb of their foe, or crushing a ribcage or two. Perhaps somewhere down the line of the Orks' evolutionary development, the WAAAGH clan breed split off as its own phenotype, mutating as the consequence of a particularly horrible and monumental racial experience and recollection of one such mass casualty event. This is my own vain speculation, however, so do not take it too seriously. In any case, the WAAAGHs wage war in a manner that we ourselves can better appreciate. They have an abundance of disciplined jetpack-born troopers, a specialist Ork detachment known as Stormboyz. These young Orks are themselves at odds with the hallowed, absurd anarchy of the greenskin species, and distinguish themselves through regimented, organised training. Such an un-Orkish, unthinkable practice is anathema to the average Ork. Primal spontaneity in both violence and its preparation is their credo, and anything too orderly smacks of mankind's influence. To put it in a manner we in the Imperium could understand, deviation from the broader Orkish biocultural norm is a kind of greenskin heresy, if you will. This infamy is only exacerbated by the WAAAGH clan's pragmatic dealings with Xenos heretic collaborative human regimes. Bartering for goods and exchanging weapons, even selling their own lives as mercenaries in the service of desperate human paymasters, the WAAAGHs are profligate beasts indeed. The traitors to humanity who enable and facilitate the WAAAGH clan's operations will inevitably find the weapons they have plied to the aliens turned against them. Moreover, the spores that follow freely moving WAAAGH mercenary warbands will, in time, bloom and blossom into less amiable tribes of Ork, within the regions blood axes have been paid to defend. It is a special kind of delusional wishful thinking and nightmarish derangement that sees a heretical planetary governor host and encourage a greenskin army at his door. The Warbosses that command such blood axe formations are apart from any other clan's leaders in warrior smarts. They have an appreciation for grand strategy and can coordinate multiple arms of the greenskin war machine in tandem. A blood axe commander, for example, may order a fighter wing of Dakka jets and attendant bombers to harry a foe's defensive positions, just before a screaming mechanized column of Ork speed freaks rolls over the shaken survivors. Among civilized species, combined arms warfare is taken as a given. For the Orks, it is strange enough that, despite its effectiveness, a blood axe commander is impugned for deviancy in the eyes of the wider greenskin cultural consensus. Other unpopular but artfully violent greenskins also find a home in the blood axes, such as the Ork commandos. Camouflaged subterfuge is another taboo in Ork culture, but it allows an Ork to more deftly get the drop on an opponent and open his throat from ear to ear with a satisfying squelch. A blood axe warboss will masterfully use these ruthless warriors. The antics blood axe commandos get up to can achieve results that far exceed conventionally attritional Orkish tactics, such as the infiltration of heavily fortified star fortresses, or the thievery of entire battleships. Unimpressive to the rest of Orkdom, such genius feats of blood axe warcraft are sorely lost on them. Mercifully, the Imperium can rest easy knowing this. If the Orkoid species began to uniformly adopt the disciplined attitude of the blood axes, who knows what the consequences might be across the many wars that rage throughout Imperial space. While greenskins are kleptomaniacs by nature, frequently stealing anything that catches their eye, including the steel support structures of entire cities broken down for scrap, there is one Ork clan that is uniquely avaricious. The Deathskulls are the greatest thieves in the cosmos. Bathing themselves in blue, another colour believed to have magical properties in the superstition of the Orks, an Imperial commander who finds himself confronted by a Deathskull warband will have to be eminently vigilant. If he is not careful and does not keep his perimeter tight at all times, the cunning mobs of so-called looters that make up much of their formations will slip past or overrun weak points in a line. Once amongst the rear guard of an Imperial camp, or set loose in an upper tier of a hive, they will smash and grab everything they can. Killing is a perversity enjoyed by every Ork, but Deathskulls love pillaging even more. Unlike bad moons, the Deathskulls favour treasure troves of weapons and vehicles most of all. That does not stop them from stripping a victim of everything he has on him, however. From bootlaces to a choice lasgun, a Deathskull doesn't waste anything left behind on a corpse, including the corpse itself, which disappears as it is forced down the monster's throat. The biggest threat posed by such Deathskull looters is the reality that they repurpose heavy stubbers, bolters, melter guns, and even volatile plasma weaponry. While looters can be found in every Ork clan and tribe, the Deathskull kind are the most subversive. They pull entire caches of arms and vehicles back with them, often in tandem, using stolen but still working tanks and armoured carriers as conveyors for the rest of their pilfered goods. Not even the carrion of burnt-out, ruined machinery is safe from their mitts. They will eagerly rob the Meks of rival warbands or clans of their prizes on the battlefield, and drag every wreck they can back to their camp. There, as supplicants to their own Mek castes, they will await orkified transformations of the old weapon systems. Equipped not long after with barbaric xenotech mongrel patterns of previously pure Imperial heavy weapons they call death guns, looters carry devastating amounts of firepower. When fighting Deathskulls specifically, an infantry platoon of the Imperium must have mastered the ability to move under heavy fire. If not, they will become sitting, static targets and be moments away from being overrun. The sheer weight of fire expended from the hordes of looters the Deathskulls can gather together allows their more grasping kindred to get in close. Once they're amongst you, you're dead, and whatever that is left on your corpse will assuredly be stamped with the blue mark of their clan's ownership, a horned death's head. Providing the greenskin race with temperamental idiosyncrasies, the clans make an already eclectic tribal society even more subdivided. They give better emphasis and shape to niche fixations latent within the greenskin psyche, and provide a biologically derived diversity of tactics to the species at large. In this way, the protean nature of the greenskin confounds any who confronts it. It is both infinitely changeable and utterly unmoving, for tribes melt and warbands break, but the clan types of Ork ever endure. Beyond these kindreds, there is another breed of Ork that is too anarchic even to be considered a clan. These are the Freebooters, and they are the navally adaptive caste of the Orkoid species. Creatures who facilitate the spread of the green plague across every known patch of space. Without them, the tribes that begin as infestations on worlds would largely be stranded. Many freebooters have their origin as exiles of a conventional tribe, having been kicked out for angering the established greenskin hierarchy. This feat is accomplished by lurid displays of arrogance that even exceed the humongous sense of self of a tribe's own warboss. The copious amount of teeth and high-status weaponry these orc braggarts flaunt doesn't help their reputation either. An envious orc boss, if it doesn't kill these flash gits or other misfits in a tribe, abandons them to fend for themselves. The worlds infested by orcs are exceedingly dangerous places. A few isolated flash gits without friends, orcs as they are, could easily end up dead, killed by larger predators or by the militaries of rival species. In this way, many flash git emigres who survive their banishment tend to end up abroad in the stars, having found their way onto the cruisers of established freebooter fleets. Serving as retinues of mercenaries, they ply their craft liberally, unencumbered by the stifling, tall poppy syndrome of a resentfully conventional orc tribe. If they are lucky, they acquire their own vessels, either purchasing them from the asteroid shack hoves of void-dwelling big Meks, or taking one by violence from a rival Ork Freebooter. Once an up-and-coming freebooter captain has gathered together a fleet of his own, it can become prodigiously wealthy. Offering conveyance to fledgling warbosses and their tribes that seek to conquer neighbouring planets, a freebooter will make sure it receives a hefty payment in return. Usually this is in the form of scavenging rights. Veritable fortunes can be unearthed by freebooters that follow in the wake of a rampaging, land-dwelling Orkish horde. A captain who manages to attach its fleet to a WAAAGH will reap a bounty of teeth beyond its wildest dreams. Plundering entire cities of their worth in materiel and arms, a freebooter captain can augment the bristling firepower of its flag cruiser, and bring aboard millions of non-Orkish slaves to sell or use in its galleyways and gunneries. Forced under the cruel whip of a runt herd, these captives will most likely live short, miserable existences as labourers and ratings before being fed to Squigs or the Ork Freebooters themselves. If a freebooter captain is lucky, it will chance upon a space hulk that breaks from warp space into the void. If it is even luckier, the freebooter will have a strong enough retinue of other Orkish mercenaries to overwhelm the horrors that lurk within. Overpowering demons, gene stealers, void fauna, and other umbral terrors, he can acquire a project that will garner him the reverence of all greenskins. Such an Orkish space hulk is a redoubtable void fortress that can be customized with all manner of absurd and ridiculous Orkish technology. If such a captain has enough mechs on hand, or a particularly clever big mech in his employ, the orkified ghost vessel can even be propelled through space by additional hulking engines and checker-painted thrusters. Such fell amalgams of colossal shipwrecks can serve as the mobile base for multiple Ork tribes numbering in the millions, or even billions. A freebooter who loans it as a huge carrier vessel will never want for a single tooth again. As it has become clear throughout this account, all mentioned elements of greenskin artifice are the product of scavenging and reinvention. Ork mechs, while imbued with an innate knowledge and capability to generate even entire starships if stirred by powerful tidal waves from the Orkoid collective unconscious, are no true artisans, adepts, or craftsmen. They are barbarous tinkers, nothing more. To put it bluntly, Greenskin technology, if taken in complete isolation, is utterly inferior to anything the Imperium has ever produced. It is the refuse, flotsam, and scrap taken from the ruins the Orks make of superior civilizations, and mangled into a jarring, twisted reflection that barely merits the term machinery. The Adeptus Mechanicus in its appraisal of this Xenos tech has ever been confounded by its sheer impossibility. Contraptions that should have no basis for motor operations miraculously move. Weapons contrived from unwieldy parts that barely fit together, with barrels that are recklessly soldered and drilled, nevertheless fire well. Gigantic and eclectically fashioned Xenos Titan gargants shift kilotons of weight on uneven treads, with every barometer and fail-safe of physics and design disastrously misaligned. What should not happen, happens. What should not be, is. If not for the unreal aura of the Orkoid spirit, it is doubtful many of their rust bucket abortions would power on, let alone allow them to win victories and inflict massacre after massacre across the galaxy. Despite the crudeness of Ork technology and its baffling operations, the machinery spawned as Aftermath is undeniably vicious. Killer Cats, Death Dreads, Stompers, all will rip apart the truthfully superior vehicles of the Imperium if they are not dealt with before they can get close. Overly proud armoured regiments of the Astra Militarum have had this lesson demonstrated repeatedly. Companies of young tank commanders and their Rust crews, perilously naive in their derision of the Orks' shambolic, teetering shanty walkers, give the orders to rev their tanks' engines and send them rumbling into a charge that would break lesser aliens with ease. The mere sight of such a colossal wave of Imperial Guard tanks grinding forward can shatter an enemy's resolve. But for the Orks piloting the murderous Xenos engines, the Leman Russ tanks are steel gristle for their mill. They meet the Braves with gusto and a fanfare of rockets. Such an encounter ends direly. Thinking themselves lost in a feudal romance, knights jousting green-skinned Goliaths, the fantasy is burst quick. The Orks' missiles spin madly like a hive dweller's firecrackers before impacting on the side armour of one Russ, penetrating it and sending its fiery carcass careening into another. Its comrades try to avenge it, firing the turrets of their battle cannons, but most of the APHE rounds are laughed off by many of the childish effigies of the Stompers. Their grinning maws chide them with static drowned green-skinned Vox roars. The patina of bright orange rust that coats all of them is stripped to shining by the barrage shells that crumple past and bounce off. But despite the salvo, the massive Stompers continue to lumber forward. The tanks keep firing, a few Stompers detonate, transfigured into burning pyres of Gork and Mork. But it is too late. As the two lines close, the spotters in the Leman's viewports can see through the pool of black smoke that chokes the air all around. In horror, they report new targets. Waves of them. Behind and increasingly around the Stompers are a churning, whirring, grinding sea of smaller Ork walkers, armour-piercing saws and drills raised and screaming. Boxed in by the denseness of their formation, carried by the momentum of the downward slope, and the kilotons of plasteel that press their hulls down, they are seconds away from impact. There is nothing they can do. The machines of man and Ork collide. All that is left after the melee is a war-torn junkyard. The bones of the tanks are unceremoniously hauled off by gangs of looters, destined for ugly fates of Xenos tech hybridization and blasphemy. They are looted. It is a sorry sight to see a proud Leman Russ chassis subjugated beneath a greenskin's brightly coloured paint job, smeared with filth and marked by barbarian sigils, but such shameful insults are all too common in our dark age. Chimeras, basilisks, medusas, even baneblades can be found in horribly contorted forms among an Ork tribe's looted columns. After having killed a machine's previous occupants, or pulling it from a despoiled storage bay, Ork Meks will vie over it like a carcass. Either won by a sole victor, like a powerful big mech, or reluctantly agreed upon to be a shared project, an Imperial vehicle sanctioned STC-4 will disappear under any number of atrocious Xenos tech defilements. The accursed customizations of the Orks. God Emperor forbid if a Greenskin WAAAGH successfully conquers a Forge world. In such an event, the Orks will plunder every last antediluvian Mechanicus vault and hangar, commandeering mankind's war machines and breaking down for scrap any whose machine spirit is powerful enough to resist their mech boys' defilement. Even mothballed god machines of the Adeptus Titanicus are not immune to the predations of the green-skinned savage. Understandably, the cult of the machine god despises Orks with a passion that belies the cold steel of their hearts. When a WAAAGH threatens the precincts and armories of the Adeptus Mechanicus's holy manufactorums, a Skitarii garrison will fight with a zeal that far exceeds mere fanaticism. It could be called desperation. A tech priest of Mars will die to prevent a howling mob of mechs from overrunning his forge fane. All the adepts I have known would rather be sadistically tortured by having all their augmetic limbs and organs ripped apart than see the holy machines and mysteries of their cult made a mockery of by contamination with xenotech. Many have been cursed with such a dark fate, and many continue to be with each new day. The martyrs of Mars serenade the machine god with binaric devotions, even as they die. Perhaps the greatest sacrilege and eerie facet of Greenskin technology is that its power comes not from harmonious expressions of mathematics, principles of physics, and the pillars of logic that uphold the universe. Instead, it derives from their subversion. Orkish willpower defies conventional reality. The laws of science bend and buckle under the weight of their species' psychic imprint. The cosmic significance of the Greenskin Gestalt is terrifying to comprehend. But it must be comprehended. If mankind is to banish it, the Orkoid psychic Gestalt's antinomy must be unravelled. So let us investigate further. An Ork by itself, an isolated, lone beast, is a dull creature. Orks by their very nature are made for communal life. They cannot escape each other. Indeed, the spores that ceaselessly generate from a single Ork will see the freak occurrence of a greenskin hermit quickly surrounded by a fresh-faced tribe of feral whooping kin. It is precisely when Orks amass and gather together in tribes that the Greenskin Gestalt consciousness becomes noticeable. A feral tribe will spawn shamanic proto-Warbosses, conduits of their shared greenskin psyche. Then, when a single feral tribe becomes a dozen, and they meet in battle to determine whose chieftain is the strongest, a feverish, indescribable energy overtakes them. It is alike to the static charge in the air before a storm. Once any dispute is ironed out, and the many tribes stand as one, that is when the Greenskin Gestalt thunders, compelling them to the next stage of Orkish development. In agonistic throes of rapidity, the primordial originators of what will become the tribe's mech caste begin to harvest any and all ore, crude powder, or scrap available to them. As if by overnight, Imperial observers will note what was previously a primitive orc infestation has become armed with newfangled, improvised miracles of greenskin technology. In reality, this process takes decades. The psychic gestalt that drives the orcs at first is gradual, but accelerates when more of their hordes gather. The rate at which it prompts orcs to societally evolve is staggering by itself. A primordial human population potentially demands millennia in order to make the change from a Stone Age society to one that unearths metallurgy. If a more advanced tribe encounters these backward reflections, a critical mass will be achieved. The primitives will quickly learn the new ways. Together, in the ruins they make of neighbouring civilizations, these tribes will erect warlike shrines to the twin deities worshipped by the green-skinned species, Gork and Mork, the entities that are perhaps the cataphatic dimensions of the green-skin psychic gestalt. These gods are the objects of devotion that inspire the great walking greenskin idols like Gorkanauts and Morkanauts to be constructed. In these armoured suits, we can see a microcosm of the Orkoid religion. Giant, mighty, and hard to kill, every greenskin aspires to be like the machine of a Gorkanaut or Morkanaut, embodying the melee strength considered to be Gork's nature, or the ranged cunning believed to be favoured by Mork. The pilots of these machines seek to assimilate within the attribute essences of their divinities. Greenskin walkers themselves are as close to a manifestation of their power as the orcs themselves can mechanically engineer. Meks who weld and join the jagged panels and nail every crooked element together will be seized by ecstatic, unholy apoplexies of greenskin cultic mania. Such vehicles are the mobile temples of the Orkoid species. Within the humid, toxic confines of a Gorkanaut or Morkanaut's cockpit, their pilots will be driven delirious by the mantic visions they experience. They smell the charnel offerings to be made of unsuspecting worlds in the years to come, becoming the oracles of the dread deities that roar deep within. Together, it is as if Gork and Mork cool in the blood of all Orkoid beings to accelerate, advance, and grow. The dual voices of these dark, cacophonic green gods bellow their message. Unite the tribes, crush all opposition, gather the WAAAGH. At first glance, there doesn't seem to be any logic behind this process of Orkoid societal evolution and religious expression. Magi of the Adeptus Biologists, however, have contrived interesting theoretical explanations. I shall expound upon their general theory of Orkoid psychic resonance and its gestalt field, but according to a niche adaptation I learned from Amagos many years ago. Every single orc is analogical to a single incendiary particle. When added to by another, the pair of green spirits within rive against each other, generating a roiling field of resonant, psychic energy. As seen in the example of a weird boy's plight, its warp-attuned mind being especially sensitive to this green-skin gestalt field, the power contained within it is explosive, to put it mildly. Its potential is only unlocked when Orks unite in a screaming horde. As a powerful warboss conquers his rivals and the tribes meld, the Gestalt's twin voices are pleased. The momentum builds and builds. The unnumbered mind particles that compose the Gestalt, concentrated in an increasingly dense formation within a localized area. When enough Orks are gathered, it is as if their shared spirit devours a hole in galactic reason and metaphysical order. A minor ripple in the warp brews like a subtle psionic storm which then surrounds an Ork host. To the horror of all who confront them, they find Orkish willpower alone truly can overcome any obstacle and give coherence and life to what would otherwise be inanimate piles of junk. This is the terrible nature of the Greenskin psychic Gestalt field. What is more terrible, however, is the culmination of such a gathering green apocalypse. It is the psychic detonation of a nightmarish war that swallows entire sectors of space. In the aftermath of its immediate devastation, an etheric whirlpool emerges, pulling at the instinct of every greenskin infestor for light years around, and dragging in the fleets of 1,000 warbands. The bane of all life caught in its tempest, such a greenskin crusade is called a WAAAGH. In the year 998 of this Vox recording, in the closing days of the 41st millennium, the Imperium is facing a near unprecedented number of greenskin WAAAGHs erupting across all known space. The Ork Archfiend Gazgul Mag Uruk Fraka has returned. Armageddon trembles before the Goth tyrant's green horde, and my institution of the Ordo Xenos has been overwhelmed by the unfolding Xenos terror that grips all corners of the Emperor's galaxy. It is for this reason I have compiled this educational data packet, that junior savant adepts of the Inquisition might comprehend the full agonizing horror of our war against the coming Orkish night. Heed this lesson on what a WAAAGH is and how it unfolds. Any detail misremembered will haunt you, for the greenskins are an unforgiving enemy. Identifying the signs of a developing WAAAGH are crucial in the race to stifle it before it can spread. As a servant of our holy Ordos, I know you will be prudent and assiduous in your work. So consider every word you hear from me, and ponder upon the perilous depth of the greenskin threat. The Great WAAAGH comes. Mankind must be ready. A WAAAGH overflows from the boiling of wars waged by arising confederations of greenskin tribes in a system or subsector. It is birthed after they finally unite and find an apex tyrant to lead them across the stars. An interstellar campaign of wanton annihilation, the greenskin WAAAGH kills every lifeform and unbending rival Orkoid faction that it encounters. For every misapplication of force, every logistical error, and wrong judgment made by Imperial commanders, the WAAAGH grows tenfold. Mishandled, divided attempts to stymie it, enhance it. A greenskin crusade is the manifestation of innumerable small sins incurred by the indolence of a subsector's governing heads. or it is the result of the foolishness of mortal strategists in the Adeptus Munitorum. Its beginning is most often born by the negligence of a planetary governor. The Greenskins, ultimately, are a scourge we, ourselves, empower. They are the lash that metes out the God Emperor's punishment unto those who do not hate and fear the alien enough. Mankind, ever failing to recognize the dire threat posed by Xenos, digs its own grave, time and time again. The story is always the same, but like the Orks, the conditions and events of a war's run-up are infinitely varied. I will provide a full account from start to finish of how a war's seeds are sown and how they sprout. A minor greenskin infestation is reported on a backwater world to the Administratum. Situated in a relatively unimportant coreward cluster of life-supporting planets, little is done to marshal a properly equipped purgation force. Having arrived there by inscrutable means, Ork spores sometimes descend on planets after sudden raids launched by Ork Freebooterz on isolated space stations. Having plundered all that is valuable within and massacring its inhabitants, the Ork Reavers power the engines of their cruisers and leave a hellish gift for those who are sent to investigate the space station's sudden unresponsiveness. The Orkoid spores that coat every surface of the space station are invisible to the naked human eye. Only an Auspex can detect their presence. The unsuspecting, damnable fools who report back to their superiors planetside bring with them their world's doom. The Xenos fungi is carried on the clothes of these servants, or expelled from the confines of their lungs. Even if they follow conventions of purgatory hygiene, Ork spores are infamously difficult to eradicate. Anything but liquid flame fails. The protocols of liquidation for those infected are not sufficiently followed. Needless to say, such parochial worlds know little of the Inquisition's methods to assure complete decontamination. Many would find them to be unconscionable, and thereby air the rot of heresy that dwells within them as well. As the imbeciles return to the recesses of their planet's hives or towns, the dwelling places few would immediately suspect of Xenos terror, the spores proliferate. Disappearing down pipes, carried along gusts of wind, no one can fully anticipate where the first Ork tribe will germinate. Nor do they often realize what has happened. Only when bestial howls are heard in the night, bellowing out from a jungle fort accursed, or a savage din erupts from a sewer, followed by the disappearances of an underhive's meanest crooks, will the first inkling of something wrong arise in the minds of those who will serve as the Ork's prey. In truth, they are indeed prey, for they are helpless to what comes up from below. Perhaps the Ork spores become lodged in a cyclopean, continent-spanning cave system, like the kind broken into by the many mines that are dug in the bowels of an underhive, finding similarly horrific mutants, monsters, or even covens of gene stealers that plot in the umbral dark. These feral Orks will fight unseen and unheard wars in the deep. If they survive, generating enough momentum to grow into fully fledged and technologically capable tribes, the Ork infestation will become completely entrenched. Potentially, they will attrite the forces of their subterranean enemies for decades. In such a scenario, a tribe will hone the warfighting abilities of its warbands to an overwhelmingly deadly proficiency. Mekboyz will cannibalize any abandoned or captured mining vehicle driven by gene stealer cultists, and the throngs of Orkboyz will grow and grow into Nobz as they devour their opponents. If victorious in such a nightmarish underwar, their warboss shall venture upwards, leading bands of runtherds with attendant swarms of Squigs. The Archbeast has heard of the puny humans that live soft lives above, but knows they also have a fighting garrison and a supply of armoured vehicles it is covetous of. The warboss is also concerned that his boys may fall into bloody disarray unless its strategy can provide them with new foes. Having convened a council of its most trusted Nobz and a few advisory Oddboyz, the warboss concocts the next stage in what will become its fledgling campaign of conquest. Laden with crude explosives, the teeming multitudes of squiggly beasts will be sent screaming into the weak points of multiple entrance mines. Having collapsed numerous pillars of stability under the hive's surface, instigating a wave of earthquakes that devastate hab structures and kill hundreds of thousands, the final element of the warboss's cunning plan comes to fruition. Its subordinates coordinate teams of tank busters to amass mountains of their own stick bombs and missiles beneath the crust's last remaining pillars. Crested by the effigy of a specially crafted mega-bomb, a project involving the tribe's entire coterie of Meks, it is a terrible wonder of greenskin ingenuity. The product of years, it is a devotional idol to Gork, or perhaps Mork. The mega-bomb is the size of an entire human city, fashioned together haphazardly from a combination of colossal mining charges hoarded from Ork commando raids on the outside underhive, or churned from the fat and sulfur of dissolved gene stealers and bestial cave fauna. There can be no doubt as to what purpose it shall serve. Preceded by the collective screams of an Orkish horde now numbering millions strong, 10,000 grots light the fuses that snake in bundles throughout the great caverns. Lit by celebratory sparks as orcs pop off preemptive shots from their shooters and big dagger guns, the mega bomb is hit by a stray round. In an instant, an entire section of the planet's crust vanishes. Consumed by a mushroom eruption of light seen from space, innumerable smaller volcanic detonations accompany its horror. The world is bathed in scalding lava and ash, searing and choking millions. An extinction event is unfolding, but this is but the opening stage in what will become an even more Stygian nightmare. Defying all odds, a significant portion of the Greenskin Annihilators survive, saved by the inhuman resiliency of their Xenos physiologies and the giant shields of Mekboy artifacts. An untold number are crippled wrecks, blasted torsos still clinging hatefully to life, and they claw up from the unearthed hells of smoking macro rubble and the fiery debris of a similarly dying world. With the hive above atomized and the warboss's quarry in the human garrison gone, the orcs recuperate from a moment's shock. They then quickly resort to an alternate plan. Unsatisfied by the millions of buried human corpses they pull free and consume, the Orks start to fight amongst each other, following strong Nob ringleaders into the catastrophe of an intra-tribal war. Only when the Warboss crushes his opponents one by one, re-establishing himself as the tribe's sole master, do the Orks realize the wisdom of his leadership. Having blunted the surprise of their attack with months of sordid infighting, the surrounding and surviving human hives and their garrisons have rallied. With Valkyries pouring focused fire of seething las cannons into the stompers they have cobbled from the hive's wreckage, and kill teams of the world's native regiment of Tempestus Scions having almost assassinated their tribe's warboss, the Orks, as one, turn to confront the planet's defenders. Such bravery in the face of this world-shaking Xenos atrocity was admirable, despite the untold lives lost to the infernos and ash storms that engulfed the hive dwellers and wider human population of Havamal Prime. Those who still breathed fought. They could do little else. The Orks were bound to conclude their tribal dispute at some point, before inevitably venting their rage elsewhere. All the while, the Greenskins, lost in the throes of savage power struggles, inadvertently planted the surface world with their spores. In the ashes, new tribes were born, scattered among the recently erupted volcanic wastes that shook the remaining hives continually with fresh effusions of superheated death and clouds of toxic gas. Perhaps you are wondering how I can detail a world's martyrdom at the hands of a greenskin horde so clearly. I understand your curiosity. This account is no figment of imagination, nor a theoretical postulation of what an orc infestation would look like. It is a precise rendition of a true event that occurred, an incident that was the object of my investigation. I strode within the blackened ruins of Havamal Prime's desolation long after the final embers of war had burned out, when the last man and orc had died on its surface, and centuries had passed since. Its carcass, condemned by my order of exterminators, served as a case study. I collated all remaining archival reports left behind by my Ordo predecessors, inquisitors who had confronted the unfurling disaster in real time. I siphoned Havamal Prime's hab skeletons, collapsed tunnels, and despoiled fortresses of every last surviving data slate and pictorial relic of evidence I could unearth. I wish I could tell you that the story ended there, that Havamal Prime was consumed in a war between its native men and Orkish arrivals, with the Xenos contagion contained, never to spread further outwards. But no, that is not the truth. Havamal Prime was but the ignition of a single spark, a flicker that would grow into a devouring flame, one that consumed an entire subsector and culminated in a greenskin WAAAGH of gargantuan proportions, drowning tens of millions in its bloody, abyssal nightmare. Drawn by the scent of Havamal's burning funeral pyre, as if brought to stirring by the ripples of the greenskin consciousness, enraptured by tides of blood and mankind's bleating, scores of migratory orc warbands emerged from the warp into real space around Havamal. Conveyed by fleets of cruisers, they broke through whatever cordon of monitor ships that remained to quarantine Havamal Prime and deposited the reinforcements that would sweep away the last vestiges of the planet's human resistance. As the last man, woman, and child perished, the Greenskins of Havamal made pacts of confederation sealed by bribes of teeth and booty with the newcomers. Having ripped apart every last living creature on its surface, they departed, descending upon nearby worlds with human populations that were attempting to flee en masse after hearing of Havamal's fate. Almost to a man, they were all slaughtered. Records of the ensuing war that burst forth from these events have all been purged. Very little survives, beyond suggestions as to how the greenskin infestation managed to spread from the Havamal system into the wider Jaeger subsector. From what I've pieced together, enthusiastic Ork Freebooters pursued the crammed vessels of the refugees that had successfully escaped their kin's clutches. It appears that the conditions that led to Havamal's death were roughly repeated in 3 immediately neighbouring solar systems, but this time were augmented by the dispersed raiding fleets of the Orks based on the burning worlds of the Havamal system. It is perhaps due to the disgrace and shame inflicted on the Imperium that the archives of this particular war were expunged. More likely, it is due to a darker term, something unspeakable, a blot or a curse beyond the mundane atrocities caused by rampaging greenskin hosts. For there are innumerable other worlds and systems like Havamal, and subsectors akin to Jaeger that have fallen after suffering a pandemic of greenskin infestations. Alas, such a morbid supposition is not the purview of this work, and I will not exhume the corpses of ghosts put to rest. Instead, I shall expound upon the generalized later stages of an Ork war, the period when a collection of tribes and their Warbosses have successfully merged, cohering under the auspices of a single warlord, and then expanding their dominion into an interstellar empire of ash and blood. Initially ascending to the void from a planet or series of planets, these Ork armies cannibalize the wreckage made of their foundational enemies' machinery and buildings, as well as any vessels of naval patrols scuppered by the macro cannons of indentured freebooter cruisers. Entire hive worlds are stripped of every movable and immovable resource, recycled for the greenskin war machine. Feverish activity and industry inspired by the now resounding boom of the Orkish psychic gestalt overtakes the entire greenskin horde. Thousands upon thousands of Meks begin to parasitize the surfaces of asteroids and moons, hollowing them out to fashion Orkish dockyards, space stations, and colossal moving fortresses that serve as tactical anchors for the amassing freshly constructed fleets of cruisers. Known as rocks, these transport vessels are incapable of warp travel, and simply drift into populated systems as the war rolls forward. They are extremely variable in size, with some containing tens of thousands of Ork fighters and others millions. A particularly large war will assault and capture numerous space hulks if they chance upon them in the void. Using greenskin teleporter technology, elite bands of Meganol camps lay claim to the choicest chambers of twisted steel within. These can house the unnumbered hordes of orcs transported off-world, as well as the endless armoured columns and green-skinned titan gargants that are finalized once the last dregs of a planet's industrial detritus are harvested and cobbled anew. The embarked Orkish WAAAGH will depart from the charred corpse of their home system, spilling over in every direction. Fleets of warp-capable cruisers jump ahead, scouting for targets in the void and smashing apart any outlying defences or fleets that bar the way. Ponderous rocks will follow, propelled by a mixture of solar winds, improvised plasma thrusters, and towed by cruisers. Rocks will potentially take decades to cross the lifeless tracks of void between systems. Ork space hulks are even less reliable, as they will drift in and out of the warp, appearing at random points throughout the cosmos. A WAAAGH is not optimal in its strategic concentrations of force. The immense weight of the Orks' numbers are often split between divergent, marauding fleets. This could be perceived as a mercy, but unpredictability has a deadly potency of its own. God Emperor help his subjects if a particularly cunning and strategically minded Ork warlord leads them. If any Imperial Navy patrols survive the outbreak of a WAAAGH's fleets as it careens through their transit routes, they can only hope to report back to their admiral and convey a hopeless warning. If they are destroyed, and no one is left alive to tell the tale, the tinder is already gathered. Entire worlds will serve as funeral pyres, beacons lit in the void. A sector wails in anguish. So begins the nightmare. At this point of the calamity, there is practically nothing isolated worlds can do to resist Orkish invasions. A planetary governor's sole duty is to hold his home planet as long as possible. He and his people must be an embankment and sacrificial offering that slows the green tsunami, by only mere days or even hours if needs be. Across the regions of Imperial space that become racked by the ceaseless raids and ruinations of the Orks, trade and industry collapses. The void itself becomes overwhelmed by the unending fields of rocks, shoals of cruisers, and horrifyingly massive manifestations of a WAAAGH's space hulks. Every astral way station, relay hub, star fortress, caravanserai, and supply depot in an enflamed system or transit spine is plundered and scuttled for scrap. Or they become infested by Orks, who then augment them with additional and excessive gun batteries for stationary defense. Particularly enthusiastic big Meks contrive colossal reactors and engines for the ruins, converting their metallic cadavers in order to add to the WAAAGH's drifting fields of rocks. These only provide but more platforms for the leapfrogging assaults of the subconscious Greenskin strategy. Vital logistical warp routes are cut as a consequence. They are severed by rampant, maddened swarms of freebooters that dog any vessel they can chase and loot. Huge flotillas of terrorized merchant vessels carrying millions of refugees clog the few that remain open, warp lanes that have yet to become dominated by Ork reavers. Behind them, engorged on the corpses of the planets they have so far depopulated, the clouds of green skin locusts inevitably follow. As this storm begins to engulf a larger proportion of a sector, the economy of the region will buckle and soon plunge into a freefall. The world's loss to the WAAAGH will include keystones and masterlings in the resource lattice work that connects it to many others throughout an administrative division of the Imperium. A slew of burnt agri-worlds will starve hive worlds in neighbouring unaffected zones of a sector. The Orkish conquest of a hive world and its manufacturing output will likewise cripple the economies of worlds dependent on its conveyor lines of specialized commodities. For example, a deprivation of STC fabricated grain harvesters and that generative equipment will, in the reverse, inflict havoc on agricultural societies sustained by their supply packs. The daisy chain of ties, oath-bound obligations, and reciprocal contracts of commercial interest between worlds is vital for the survival of mankind's many polities, the vassals and tributaries of him on Terra. All are interdependent on one another. A WAAAGH sledgehammer will catastrophically batter down these networks and crush the ligaments that join the celestial body of man. A Greenskin Crusade decimates worlds it hasn't even yet touched. The vacuum of imperial power in many parts of a sector threatened by the overrun of greenskins can also see the intervention and instigations of other more pernicious enemies. Whether predated upon by Chaos Space Marine warbands, piratical fleets of Eldar, or opportunistic Tau expeditions, a WAAAGH opens up potentialities that all mankind's enemies eagerly seize upon. Even then, the Imperium is a leviathan. Rolling cascades of famines, economic disasters that desolate 100 worlds, the delirious system-wide heretical insurgencies of terror that precede the arrival of a WAAAGH, all can be endured. The dominoes felled by the Orks and the carrion feasters that follow them can be retrieved, over eons if need be. What proves less tolerable is the pressure that such greenskin crises can inflict on the myriad other fronts of the Imperium's wars, entrenched conflicts spanning light years. These are far older, many are decades or centuries in the waging. Such protracted investments demand an unseemly amount of materiel, men, and supplies to continue. Another front opened is another leech that drains the wider theatre of its already stretched resources, and provides another burden for a Segmentum's Byzantine logistical strategy. The cost to the Imperium's defenders on these fault lines of defence is dreadful. Countless regiments of the Imperial Guard will disappear, attrited beyond capacity for replenishment, lacking sufficient ammunition, rearmament, and support as a result of the WAAAGH's emergency. Redoubts of resistance against greater horrors crumble as a result, swallowing countless more crucial fortress sectors in chaos and alien carnage. The attritional big picture of the galactic war the Imperium struggles under is the ultimate truth to be contemplated, not the myopic obsession with particular details of horror unleashed by a single WAAAGH. It is easy to find one's emotions taxed by the mountains of eyewitness reports of Orkish atrocities that collect in the docket of an inquisitorial investigation. The Greenskins will spend every moment they are not adequately opposed concocting new escalatory tactics of terror. In my years studying the phenomenon of a WAAAGH, it is not uncommon to read of Ork mech bosses using tractor beams to unseat a moon from its orbit. The devils wield such satellites as colossal pellets, propelling them in a gravitic slingshot that can crack open a planet's crust down to its core. By eccentric feats of diabolism such as these, they seek to break the will of man. By unfettering bloody turmoil amongst the stars, they wish to stir a similar disorder of passions within you. You cannot let them. That is why a stoic detachment must be cultivated. A cold affect and distant regard is absolutely vital when formulating the countermeasures deployed by the Imperium's higher institutions. Pure rationality must dominate judgment, and though the bloated adeptors of the Administratum and Munitorum fail in this often, they do not fail in the icy comportment of their appraisals. The ultimate responsibility of a WAAAGH's dispersion falls upon the shoulders of the grinding bureaucracy of the Munitorum's officiates. If the WAAAGH is threatening vital economic zones of Imperial space, such as mining worlds boasting rare earth deposits, or asteroid fields speckled with priceless materials, then a response will be more rapid. A string of hive worlds, even if each of their populations number in the tens of billions, will not elicit as quick a dispatch of a relieving crusade fleet. Only if they are resourceful or productive in types of arms, munitions, manpower, or industrial capacity will the Administratum affirm the necessity of their extrastellar defense, and forward an alert and request for relief to the Departamento Munitorum. Perhaps that sounds grim, but in reality, considering the galactic scope of Imperium grand strategy, such a ruthless pragmatism is necessary. Raw materiel and ore is the lifeblood of the Imperium's means of production. If the millions of refineries and their conveyor lines in a sector of Imperial space stuttered for a single second, trillions would die as a result. Though some planetary governors accept their fate, mitigating the fallout of demoralization that will inevitably spread like wildfire throughout their diverse polities, and piously holding on to oaths of honor and dignity, many others do not. It is easy to mouth the quaint, rousing dogmas of the Ministorum during the slivers of peace that are interspersed between times of war. It is much harder to honor the Emperor's name and his expectations when confronted by imminent death, especially for the decadent, puffed-up rulers of many civilized worlds. No worse premonition is there than the sudden, terrifying emergence of a slew of green-skinned space hulks and engine-propelled rocks that tumble out of warp space near a system's Mandeville point, or even perilously close above a world's atmosphere. Such an ignoble planetary governor, fearing his regime's overthrow by the convulsions of terror that seize his planet after news of an Ork WAAAGH's arrival in system, hoards every PDF soldier and armament he can. Rather than answer the summons of his neighboring worlds, joining forces in a coalition and coordinating logistics to oppose the Greenskins, the fool doubles down. Due to his selfish cowardice, the vital munitions that the planetary governor's hive manufactorums produce feed only his own forces' guns, upgrades. The tithed allocations previously allotted for the militaries of his neighbours are abjured, and the rest of the system is starved of its defence. These debacles end in inefficient timescales of resistance, providing wide margins of doom to even more systems that will become overrun. To rely on the coin flip of a planetary governor's stalwart or flagging convictions is utter madness. Hence, the only real time bought in the meat grinder of a WAAAGH's progression is by the intervention of entire regiments of the Imperial Guard. If lucky, perhaps drawn by promises of resource reimbursements and extraction rights, a Forge world not too distant from the conflict will dispatch its own cohorts of Skitarii and Princeps of the Adeptus Titanicus to aid the ongoing war effort. As human reinforcements arrive, ferried and shielded by fleets of the Imperial Navy, entire systems and clusters of worlds will become choke points to bar the anarchic green beast from encroaching further into a subsector or larger divisions of populated space. Grinding them in attritional battles, fought both in the void where shoals of Ork Freebooters and their cruisers escort moon-sized converted meteor vessels, as well as planetside across 100 fronts, the Imperium can only delay the building momentum of an Ork WAAAGH. The true danger of the greenskin species is found here. As I have already established, fighting an Ork is akin to helping it. This proves true when considering them collectively. Unless they are annihilated utterly and easily while weak, half-hearted but nevertheless ample resistance provides the sharpening stone greenskins need. Summoned by the cacophony of hab-sized naval guns that attempt to bombard greenskin-occupied hives from orbit, and taken in by the legends spread by mercenary freebooters of a big WAAAGH, it is only a matter of time until trickles of Ork migrations become floods. Paying obeisance to the Archfiend behind the murder of dozens, if not hundreds of worlds, lesser Warbosses will join him with their baying throngs, adding to an interstellar war with an escalation that lacks any off-ramp. They come and come, from far away as veteran reavers, or as new-born feral tribes generated from the even more numerous decimillions of spores that saturate anything the greenskins touch on their warpath. The sheer scale a WAAAGH can reach, theoretically, is tantamount to the threat we now encounter in the Tyrannid Hive fleets. There is no half measure or moderate option in a war against the Orks. It is a war of racial annihilation. Them or us. Only the species with the stronger will and bigger guns survives. When the pitch of the battle that rages across a span of light years beyond counting reaches a certain threshold, only then can a greater stirring from slouching Imperial Lord Bureaucrats be hoped for. Perhaps they assemble a crusade fleet, a castigatory force composed of millions of the Imperium's finest warriors. A joint body that includes detachments from such prestigious Imperial Guard regiments as the Vestroyan Firstborn, Cadians, or Death Corps of Krieg. If the consultation is shaken enough, and the clouds of lethargy depart from over the assessors' sleepless minds, they will activate the sinister cells of the Officio Assassinorum. A turbo-penetrator round from a Vindicare's Exitus rifle can stop a WAAAGH before it even begins by vaporizing its fledgling warlord's brainstem. As it progresses, however, and the hosts of greenskins become embedded in the worlds they seize, this remedy proves not to be the panacea many would want it to be. Beyond any of these masterful practitioners of the art of war and death, the Orks only fear one caste of mankind's defenders. They are the descendants of the very same demigods who broke the back of Orkish tyranny eons ago, when green monsters the size of towering spires were smoked onto the rubble of the ruins they had made of mankind's colonies, and then driven to the outer dark, gnashing their tusks, lost to a despair and terror they had never before known. Architects of the Orkoid species near extinction, they are the shield that slays, his angels, the Space Marines. When an Astartes is roused to war against a Greenskin WAAAGH, it is the recapitulation of a battle fought by antediluvian ancestors who bore his own gene seed in their progenoid glands. A chapter of the Adeptus Astartes has known no more frequent a foe in its long and vaunted history. After a chapter master has made overtures of intervention or agreed to lend companies to a retaliation force, they make warp jump for the embattled quadrants of Imperial space under siege. As real space is broken and exhausted Imperial Navy admirals greet their captains with voxhails, the Astartes waste little time. They line the holds of Thunderhawks and maglock inside breacher pods, bolters primed and chain blades roaring, falling upon the Orks in the void, matching the aggression of freebooter Ork vessels with the brute silhouettes of Astartes strike cruisers. Space Marines tear the heart out of a greenskin fleet, and then fall upon the worlds they terrorize in showers of ceramite and plasteel. They are more than a match for any Xenos abomination the greenskin race can muster. Servos straining, tensing a superhuman musculature buttressed by the black carapace infused with the enhancement of his thrumming power armor, a Space Marine grips a Warboss by its immense power claw and holds. Defying a brute thrice his already colossal size, both in width and height, and suspending a weight and power that would crumple and pierce an adamantine bulkhead with ease, the Astartes proves his worth to the Imperium. In the space between seconds, victory is won. With fractions of time dissected by the ultra-fast cerebral computations of a mind neurally augmented and honed by hypno-indoctrination, the Astartes chooses his micro-moment of glory. He pirouettes, twisting. The Warboss is flung, propelled by the momentum of its own great might and the Space Marine's reversal. It is impaled on the jagged outcrop of a hive spire's rebar. The monster writhes and screams, but not in pain. The captain knows that Orks barely feel the torment of flaring synapses, as he has executed 100,000 smaller, twisted green likenesses of the monster that attempts to pull itself free from death. It is hatred that bellows from the beast's lungs, a hatred that has consumed billions of the lives that the Astartes swore to protect centuries ago. The Space Marine introduces the Ork to his caste's own hatred. It is a cold, controlled, and utterly superior mirror. So perfect in its exposition that as he approaches the Warboss, casually retrieving his power blade from the blood-soaked ruin beneath the crush of his ceramite boots, he notices something in the green skin's red, alien eyes. It is fear. Before the whip crack of the sword's power generator sounds, he buries it up between the monster's flat nasal passages. Wrenching it, the Space Marine pulls the relic clean in an explosion of smoking green cartilage, blood, bone, and electrified grey matter. With the Greenskin leader dead, the cohesion of its tribe collapses. A finger that grips the throat of mankind is snapped clean off, and the rest of the green fist spasmodically loosens in a rare moment of agony. With such high-intensity precision strikes, 100 battle brothers of a single Astartes company can turn the tide of a conflict that has consumed the lives of more than 100 million guardsmen. Across a dozen systems in the theatre of a war, near identical duels play out. Space Marine champions and their kill teams vie with Orkish counterparts, and one by one, the Orkish Hydra is decapitated. With the Greenskin hierarchy upended, its Warbosses and unifying figurehead in the Warlord gone, the WAAAGH buckles to the immortal will of the Emperor's angels and collapses. By feats of Astartes' valor such as these, wars are thwarted, and humanity is delivered by one more day from what otherwise could be its imminent extinction. Even then, history is littered with the bones of Astartes that attempted daring rescues of civilian populations and mortal soldiers caught in the maw of a Greenskin war. Despite their feats of desperate heroism, spending the lives of their brothers freely in the name of the Emperor and his Imperium, they were overcome. Like all the others who struggled against the storm, they drowned, defiant to the last, holding close the hallowed banners of their chapter and invoking the names of their gene fathers. One can only tolerate so many of these stories. They mark the annals of 10,000 years, and the memorial statuaries erected on holy terror. An unending tally of the gloriously lost, souls buried under the immensity of Orkid's long and crushing reach throughout the ages. Our victories dwindle. Imperial armies are ever forced onto the back foot. The shadow falls. I can only gaze upon the perfect bronze and marble features of the Primarchs and pray. Pray that they may return to us and see mankind shepherded to salvation. For we merely mortal men and successors to those who walked with the Emperor 10 millennia ago have proven infinitely inferior than they. The legend of Ullanor hangs in my mind, the visions of a shining age that would blind us if we took but one true glimpse. Only the Primarchs, his sons, gene-forged demigods, could redeem us from our existential plight and put a stop to the unending humiliations we suffer at the hands of the Greenskin Scourge. My Ordo is prone to a morose outlook on mankind's current fits of resistance against the Orkish hordes. But it is a hard truth that one must swallow. We are sorely lacking. Only by accepting this fact can the Imperium make the changes it must make to effectively oppose the sweeping green nightmare that eclipses countless worlds. Victories over the irrepressible green oceans of hate in a war are always Pyrrhic. The Astartes conquerors and surviving Imperial Guard and Mechanicus forces will be burdened with the purgation duties necessary to rout the greenskin warbands and tribes that resist annihilation in the anarchic infighting that follows between them. If the armies of mankind do not stamp out and nullify the vestiges of WAAAGH energy fields, the Orks will find new leaders, and the entire nightmare will reignite. For decades, if not centuries afterward, the spores disseminated by the dead WAAAGH's hosts will bloom. Feral tribes, primitive as they are, will fester, and despite cordons of quarantine and heightened imperial vigilance, it is inevitable that some of these greenskin inverts will go beyond bone twirling and rediscover the shooters and other artifacts of Xenos tech left behind by their ancestors on forgotten battlefields. Unless absolute stringency and dogmatic adherence to an inquisitorial investigation's findings and its delegation's edicts are maintained, with every last trace of the spores, xenotech, and orc corpses erased, utterly, the cycle is doomed to repeat, again and again. Perhaps now you understand my pessimism. Even if Guilliman, Russ, Corax, and those divines unaccounted for do not come back to us, we must never relent in refining our stratagems and purifying our intentions to honor the God Emperor with ceaseless struggle. Only with his grace and the diligence he inspires in us will we throw back the Xenos barbarians that howl at the Imperium's gates. Ork, man, war. A triad if there ever was one. 3 sets of 3. An eerie, portentous, and terrifying occurrence. What a numerological omen, but I believe it could be in our favour, if we grip hold of war, and embrace it and master it more than even the greenskins could. Admittedly, our foe, as it stands, struggles with us handily for its dominion. Orks are a formidable, zealous, and veritably manic adversary, but, as Ullanor proved, they can be overcome, as always, only if guided by the God Emperor's all-powerful and warlike hand. The mad fanaticism of the greenskin dyad of Gork and Mork can be sundered, but the yearning desire of Orkdom for war is unending. It is the zest for war, synonymized with life, and indeed unflinchingly considered as life itself, that has enabled the greenskin species to be the Imperium and mankind's longest running adversary. There is quite literally nothing outside of war for an orc. As inhuman and barbarous as this outlook is, it is undoubtable that it has engendered an evolutionary fitness that can only be marveled at, as well as hated. If there is anything mankind can learn from the orc, it is to embrace war as an inevitability on par with death itself. There is no paradise world to flee to, or moment of reprieve to be yearned for. In the 10,000 years since the Imperium's founding, there has been only war. Before its founding even, during the whispered dark age of technology, and before then too, war has always been with us. Perhaps it came to fruition when a bestial biped first launched a stone at its neighbour and clambered over his corpse. Anything other than a total dedication to mankind's survival is cowardice. Any half measure or quibbling point of indecision a weakness. Pointless thinking, the chatter of a mind lost in its own winding vicissitude. The greenskin knows nothing of this frail decadence. He is beneath it. Mankind must go beyond it if we are to survive. Whether individually or collectively, the struggle for life is never ending. It never had a beginning, much like, if we are to believe, the Orks.